Chapter 31:22. On the city wall, there were many terrified aborigines. There were also some divine race members who were watching the show coldly with their arms crossed. After being oppressed for so many years, the divine race members did not have a good impression of the aborigines. They could not wait for them to die quickly. Zichin began to give the order to attack the formation. When the city was breached, it would be the time for the aborigines to be annihilated. The sudden voice caused everyone to be stunned. They were all very puzzled. The city defense formation was their last line of defense. Who was speaking? A beam of light appeared and turned into an elder. He stood in the air and looked at Zichin. I won't stop you. You can enter the city directly. Don't destroy the formation again. If the formation is broken, the rules of this world will change. Zichin looked at the other party with a puzzled face. You have come to the city twice. If I want to stop you, you won't be able to leave. This is a grudge between the two of you. It has nothing to do with me, the guardian of the formation. The elder standing in the air said again. There was an uproar on the city wall. Some of the aborigines guessed the elder's identity. Zichin was still puzzled. However, he vaguely understood that the other party did not seem to belong to the same camp as the aborigines. The elder continued, I can open a door for you to let all the dark heavenly ants in. However, you can't break the formation. Zichin looked at the elder and said, You are the formation spirit? You can say so. With a thought, Zichin made all the dark heavenly ants that had sneaked into the ground to attack appear again. Then, they returned to Paji's side. You stay here. I'll go into the city. Zichin turned to look at Paji and said, Be careful, Paji reminded. Zichin walked into the city alone. He did not bring the dark heavenly ant with him. Wherever he passed, countless natives and God clan members stared at him. The aborigines' faces were filled with fear. However, the divine race members' eyes were filled with fanaticism. The elder who could control the formation came to Zichin's side and said, I witnessed what happened back then with my own eyes. I didn't stop them. When you left twice, I didn't stop you either. What do you plan to do next? You want to stop me now? Zichin said without turning his head. Of course not. I'm just curious about what you'll do. In this year of war, too many of the aborigines have died. Their overall strength has decreased by a lot, the old man said. But it's still a threat to the Protoss, isn't it? Zichin said calmly. Given the current situation of the Protoss, unless the natives are all dead, the threat will always exist. Even if the natives are all dead, the Protoss may not be able to regain their freedom. Zichin could understand what the old man meant. The natives had been suppressing the Protoss. Although it was wrong, the lack of unity and resistance of the Protoss was also the main reason. You can control the formation? Zichin asked again. Sure, the old man said. It seems that you are the rule of this city. Unfortunately, you haven't done anything all these years. Zichin walked forward. His target was the core of the exchange. If they're wrong, you should punish them. You shouldn't ignore them and cause them to continue making mistakes. The old man replied. The weak are prey to the strong. This is an eternal rule. I used to take action, but the Protoss who came here have their own camps. Gradually, they were not worthy of my action. There was disappointment on the old man's face. Obviously, he was completely disappointed with the Protoss who came here. Zichin believed that the Protoss had a reason, but it was definitely not the main reason. If the awakening altar in the lower level had not been destroyed, they would not have had the power to resist the natives. The Protoss would not have been so weak. As for later, the Protoss who had the power did not resist. Obviously, they saw that they were weak and did not resist. Over time, they had become accustomed to this kind of oppression. What do you plan to do with the natives? The old man asked again. I haven't thought about it yet. How about killing them all? Zichin said. Up to you, the old man said calmly. The law of this world is that the weak are prey to the strong. Now that you are stronger than them, you can do whatever you want with them. The existence of that thing seriously affects the aesthetics. Zichen looked up at the exchange castle and said, "That's simple." The old man only said 3 words. The light in the sky fell. The light was like lightning and hit the exchange castle. There was a roar in the city, and the castle collapsed instantly. Powerful fluctuations spread out in all directions, and countless resources fell from the sky. In the blink of an eye, the exchange castle and the city disappeared. Only the exchange core remained. Looking at the exchange core, Zichen nodded and said, "Yes, it looks much better now." "Young man, what do you plan to do?" the old man asked again. Zichen turned around and looked at the frightened natives. "Now, go back and get the awakening altar. Each family should bring at least 5. If there are enough, you can live. If there are not enough, your family will be destroyed." The frightened natives seemed to see hope. They immediately turned around and ran back to their families. The old man continued, "If you want to collect the awakening altar, you can tell me directly. I know where they are. As long as you don't leave the city, the awakening altar will not break." Zichen nodded and said, "Okay then. Collect all the awakening altars and protect them. Then, all the Protoss can awaken at will. Also, the exchange core will be open to the Protoss. If you do these 2 things, I will let the natives go." In fact, Zichen did not want to destroy their families. Over the years, the natives had been fighting to the death. They wanted to protect their families from being destroyed. Since they had suffered heavy losses, Zichen did not need to kill them all. The Matrix Genie could control everything in the city. He had the power to supervise. The awakening altar could be sealed with space. The family members brought the awakening altar over. If each family had 5, the big families could gather them. This was also because the Matrix Genie ensured that the awakening altar would not be destroyed. Otherwise, each family would only have 1 left. At this moment, the family leaders walked towards Zichen and handed over their awakening altars. In the crowd of natives, there were 2 inconspicuous people. They were from the St. Leon family. They used to have 2 names. One was Drunkard, and the other was Trash. Now, the drunkard was not drinking. It was unknown if he had run out of money to buy wine. That Trash was no longer the same as before. His face was blank and foolish, and his eyes were flashing with a bright light. He glanced at the drunkard beside him. The drunkard nodded. The guy who was called Trash walked forward. Some people noticed this scene. However, with Zichen here, they did not dare to say anything. Saint Lentoin walked up to Zichen. Only Wang Yiping was there. When he looked at Zichen, he was not afraid at all. The people around turned their heads and watched this scene. "Congratulations on your return." Saint Lentoin looked at Zichen and said, "Does the promise we made back then still stand?" "Of course." "What do you want?" asked Zichen. Saint Lentoin's face suddenly twisted. There was a ferocious look on his face. "I want all the rank 7 warriors of the St. Leon family to die." Chapter 31-23. The conversation between Saint Rentoin and Zichen was extremely short. There were only a few words, but the information revealed shocked everyone. In an instant, the expressions of the remaining rank 7s from the St. Leon family changed drastically. "Ener, why are you doing this?" said a rank 7s from the St. Leon family. Saint Rentoin turned around and stared at him coldly. "Just call me Saint Rentoin, or Trash. I can't bear the name Ener." The surroundings were in an uproar. No one expected this to happen. Saint Rentoin was undoubtedly the first native to form an alliance with Zichen. "Ener, this is too much of a joke. The family hasn't mistreated you all these years, right?" said the rank 7s from the St. Leon family again with an ugly smile on his face. "Of course we haven't mistreated me. Back then I risked my life to get the contribution points from Zichen, and all of you took them away. For the past few hundred years, I've been the Trash that everyone in the St. Leon family hates, and my father is a drunkard that everyone despises. The family has treated us father and son extremely well," said Saint Rentoin coldly. "This may be a misunderstanding. As the saying goes, jade can't be made into anything without being cut. We're also training your mind, said the rank 7s again. At this time, as long as Saint Rentoine said a word, they could live. So what if they were a little shameless? Saint Rentoine, whose face had become ferocious due to anger, suddenly laughed. He said, "You're finally wagging your tails and begging for mercy in front of me like dogs. Actually, after thinking about it carefully, I also think this is a misunderstanding. After all, training one's mind is very important." The rank 7's smile froze, but he didn't dare to get angry. He nodded and smiled. "That's right. This is a misunderstanding." Saint Rentoine's smile didn't fade. He said again, "Since it's a misunderstanding, then let all the rank SIXs from the Saint Louen family die together." "What?" The rank 7 stared at Saint Rentoine with wide eyes, wondering if he had heard wrong. Saint Rentoine ignored him. Instead, he turned around and looked at Zichen, clearly telling him that this wasn't a joke. "Little bastard, you must die!" The rank 7 shouted angrily and charged towards Saint Rentoine. Saint Renton stared at him coldly and said, "If I die, the house of Saint Renton will be destroyed." Rank 7 paused and glared at him with hatred. Saint Renton said coldly, "You killed all the people in the family who could be killed in the name of righteousness. If it was really for the family, I wouldn't blame you. I could even let bygones be bygones and let you live. But your goal is not for your family, but for your own survival. Therefore, in order to strengthen the family, I also ask you to die. Don't worry, I won't forget what you've done for the family. I'll set up a memorial arch for you in the family's ancestral hall. Little bastard, I should have killed you back then." This rank 7's face was full of resentment. Behind him, the old man who had told Saint Rentoine to get lost was also trembling in fury. Zichen looked at the array genie beside him. The formation spirit nodded. Rays of light fell from the sky and landed on the bodies of the rank 7 and rank 6 cultivators. As the array genie, he knew everything that happened in the array. Also knew very well how many rank 7 and rank 6 cultivators the house of Saint Renton still had in the city. Although it was very inappropriate for him to take action, he was still willing to let these people die in exchange for the lives of the natives in the city. As the light fell, all the rank 6 and rank 7 cultivators of the house of Saint Renton were dead. Looking at the corpses on the ground, Saint Rentoine breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he turned to Zichen and said, "We agreed that you would elect me as the master of the family." Zichen nodded with a smile and said, "Now you are the master of the house of Saint Renton." Saint Rentoine frowned slightly and said, "Isn't this too childish?" Zichen smiled and said, "No, if you want to be the master of all the forces among the natives, it's also possible." Saint Rentoine's eyes lit up and he said, "Can I? I'm only rank 1. Before, I was trash in everyone's eyes." "Of course you can. If anyone is unwilling, they must die." Zichen looked back at the natives and said, "Does anyone refuse? You are welcome to raise any objections." These people were obviously shrewd. They immediately saluted Saint Rentoine and said, "Greetings, master." Hearing these neat and loud voices, Saint Rentoine said with a smile, "It's still too childish, but I like it." In this way, only Juan Epine Saint Rentoine became the master of all the native forces. He took all the contribution points of the dead rank 6 and rank 7 cultivators. Later, these contribution points would all be exchanged for resources. His deal with Zichen could be said to be the biggest return at the smallest price. This matter would be discussed for many years to come. Saint Rentoine became the master of the family and took over the family. During this period, there were no voices of protest. Because as long as Zichen was alive, they would not have the courage to resist. Zichen did not communicate with the other Protoss. He only told Iron Sword that the people of the Nightmare Force could join Iron Sword Force when they arrived. Iron Sword naturally had no objection to this. The other rank 7 Protoss in the city wanted to talk to Zichen through Iron Sword, but Zichen rejected them directly. When he was attacked, these people did not even bother to put up a front. Naturally, he had nothing to talk to them about. Next, he rested in the city and waited for the city to settle down. The Protoss were completely liberated. They could exchange for resources at low prices and awaken their own powers for free. They were extremely grateful to Zichin. Saint Rentoin took control of the family. After everything settled down, he chose to go into seclusion. His realm was too low. Now that Zichin was helping him, no one dared to resist him. Once Zichin left, he would be in a difficult situation without strength. Fortunately, the Saint Rentoin family no longer had rank 6 and rank 7 cultivators. This made it much easier to take control. After Saint Rentoin went into seclusion, his father took over the family for him. With a family to take charge of, his father stopped drinking. Now, as long as one looked up, they could see the ball at the core trading area. All the Protoss could exchange for resources at any time, anywhere. The old man who called himself the spirit of the formation had disappeared. Including Iron Sword, no one in the city had seen him before. If Zichin had not appeared this time, he might never have appeared. Now that everything was back on track, the spirit of the formation replaced the rules and controlled everything here. Once someone violated the rules, they would be punished by the rules. Zichin had to comprehend Sword Dao after breaking through his realm, so he had not been idle recently. He stayed in the city alone while Podji led the Dark Heavenly Ant out to fight. Since he had decided to leave, Zichin naturally would not forget the resources here. The resources here were endless. As long as he obtained enough contribution points to exchange, he could bring these resources back to the God Realm. Chapter 31-24. In the past few decades, more and more rank 3 cultivators had come to this level. Some of them were from the Nightmare faction and joined the Iron Sword faction. There were also some who weren't from the Nightmare faction but joined the Iron Sword faction after learning that Zichin was there. More than 4/5 of the people who came to this level would join the Iron Sword faction. This allowed the Iron Sword faction to develop rapidly in just a few decades. Perhaps there weren't many powerful cultivators in this faction, but it wouldn't take long for them to grow. After the crisis in the city was resolved, Heavenbreaker left. Zichin contacted him and told him his idea. "Is it difficult?" Zichin asked. Heavenbreaker stared at Zichin and said, "Of course it's difficult. 100,000 crystals." Zichin didn't wait for Heavenbreaker to finish and said directly, 200,000. 150,000. No. Do you know that one crystal costs 1,000 contribution points? How many contribution points do you need for 150,000? Your contribution points aren't yours, right? You know that they aren't mine. Is there a need to ask for so much? You pick them up for free. What's wrong with me taking some? Pick them up for free? Countless dark heavenly ants sacrificed their lives for those. What do you mean by pick them up for free? The Ant Queen also needs energy to break through. How can I take all the resources? 150,000, that's it. Seeing that Heavenbreaker was about to say something, Zichin didn't give him a chance to speak and said, "You have to consider me. I have a large family to take care of. If you take 150,000 Godly King's soul essences, do you know how many people I can nurture? They'll all be trash. You might as well give them to me." Heavenbreaker's attitude was firm. Zichin said, "How about this? As long as you can guarantee that we can return safely, I'll compensate you with some resources next time." "Deal." After saying that, Heavenbreaker prepared to leave. Zichin asked, "What are you doing? This place is very special. Otherwise they wouldn't have trapped Fina. I have to find her and discuss with her." Heavenbreaker turned into a ray of light and disappeared. After watching Heavenbreaker disappear, Zichin returned to the city. He did not look for Su Mengyao and the others. After they had broken through, they would look for him. After returning to the city, Zichin went straight to his residence. Wherever he went, the God Race people would look at him with worship in their eyes. The natives, on the other hand, looked at him with awe. After a few decades, the Protoss and the Aborigines once again cooperated, but this time, it was an equal cooperation. It was not like before, when the Protoss were purely oppressed. After returning to his residence, Zichen took out a piece of God King's soul essence and refined it. The Divine King's soul essence played an important role in his rapid rise in cultivation. It was also the greatest resource for breaking through in this world. In fact, this was an ultimate resource that could allow a Divine King to reach the 9th rank in one go. As for how to reach the Divine Realm after reaching the 9th rank, Zichen had no idea. The surface area of the Divine World was boundless, and the number of 9th grade Divine Kings was also boundless. However, only 9 of them were able to reach the Heavenly God Realm. Moreover, there would always only be 9 of them. Only when one of them died would there be someone to replace him. This made Zichen very surprised. If it was a realm that could be exchanged with cultivation, why was it that no one had reached it? What was the secret behind this? Zichen shook his head and smiled bitterly. He was only at the 6th grade now. There was still a long way to go before he reached the 9th grade. It was too early to think about the Heavenly God Realm now. Just as he was about to calm down and refine the God King's soul essence, Zichen heard Tai Jian's voice from outside. Zichen got up. After opening the door, he looked at Tai Jian in surprise. "I'm preparing to break through," Tai Jian said as soon as he entered. After breaking through from the 7th grade to the 8th grade, one would have to leave this world. Obviously, Tai Jian meant that he was going to leave. "After reaching the 8th grade, where will you go?" Zichen gestured for Tai Jian to sit down. Tai Jian shook his head and said, "I'm not sure, but it's unlikely to be the Divine World." Zichen looked at Tai Jian and said, "Do you want to return to the Divine World?" Tai Jian turned around and looked at him in surprise. Zichen said, "I have a way to break out of this world. There's a high chance that I can return to the Divine World." "What do you mean?" Tai Jian was still confused. "In other words, if I want to leave now, I can break out of this world and return to the Divine World. I don't need to follow the rules of this world." Zichen explained patiently. "How is that possible?" Tai Jian sat up in disbelief. Zichen said, "It's true. Think about it. If you want to return to the Divine World, suppress your realm for now. If you don't want to return to the Divine World, then you can break through and leave. As for the future development of Tai Jian's faction, you can arrange for someone you trust to take care of it." Tai Jian was shocked when he heard this. He had heard of breaking the rules of this world, but he had never encountered it. After all, this was a world created by the heavenly gods. It followed the heavenly gods' rules. If Zichen could really break out of this world without following the rules, wouldn't he have the strength to resist the heavenly gods' rules? Then, he thought of something. Recalling the scene of the arrow piercing through the sky, he felt that it was possible. Therefore, his heart became active. He had been in this world for too long. Naturally, he wanted to return to the Divine World. After giving Zichen a clear answer, Tai Jian left the city and went out to fight. Obviously, he had the same idea as Zichen. After reaching the Divine World, he wanted to leave with a large amount of resources. The city was very quiet. There were no more internal disputes and battles. Therefore, Zichen stayed in the city when he was cultivating. When he was not cultivating, he would go out to fight. However, compared to the Ant Queen, his contribution was pitifully small. With the Ant Queen, his contribution increased every day. The number was very impressive. In the blink of an eye, another 100 years passed. On this day, Su Mengyao and the others came to the city to look for Zichen. Except for a few people who did not break through, the others had all broken through to the 6th level, including the monk and the others. At the same time, they also brought a lot of contribution. Zichen gestured for everyone to go and exchange for resources. It was time to leave. He had to go and find Saint Rentoin. The Saint Rentoin family had always been very quiet. Especially after losing all the 7th and 6th level experts, they were very low-key. Now, the family had been managed by Saint Rentoin's father. It was not bad. Zichen's appearance outside the mansion caused an uproar. The guards at the gate immediately went to report to the family. In a moment, Saint Rentoin's father and some elders quickly came out. They seemed to be in fear and trepidation. They had invited Zichen many times, but Zichen did not come to the mansion. This time, he came uninvited. This made everyone very nervous. "I'm here to find Saint Rentoin." Chapter 31:25. Zichen directly explained his intentions. This made the people of the St. Luen family less panic. Although Saint Renton was in seclusion, Zichen had come personally, so he naturally had to come out of seclusion. Saint Renton's father brought Zichen to a spacious hall and personally poured him some water. "Sir, please wait for a moment. My son will come out soon," Saint Renton's father said respectfully. Zichen nodded and didn't say anything. He tried to be polite earlier, but the other party seemed very panicked, so he stayed silent. A moment later, footsteps sounded. Saint Renton had come out of seclusion. Compared to 100 years ago, his realm had skyrocketed. He had directly reached the 4th rank of the king realm. Obviously, he also used the essence of the king of gods. "Sir, you're looking for me?" After entering, Saint Renton looked at Zichen. His father had already left the hall. At the same time, he waved his hand, indicating for the people nearby to leave. Zichen indicated for Saint Renton to sit first. He glanced outside the hall and said, "I'm going to leave this place." Saint Renton studied Zichen. He was very puzzled. It was common knowledge that one could only leave after reaching the 8th rank. Obviously, Zichen hadn't reached the 8th rank yet. Then what did he mean by leaving? Going to other places in this world? If that was the case, there shouldn't be a need to tell him, right? "Leave this world," Zichen said again. Saint Renton's mouth was open. He was confused and shocked. "We'll leave soon. Maybe we'll have a chance to come back. Before we leave, I think it's necessary to inform you so that you can be mentally prepared," Zichen said. Saint Renton came back to his senses and smiled bitterly. In his original plan, Zichen still had a long time to leave this world, so during this time, he had plenty of time to grow until he had enough power to control the family. He didn't expect Zichen to have a way to leave when he was still at the 6th rank. The city now has its own rules. Things like oppression shouldn't happen anymore. "Before I leave, I'll talk to the Matrix Spirit. In times of danger, it'll protect this St. Luen family," Zichen said. "If nothing unexpected happens, I'll come back here again. It won't take long. But if an accident happens, everything will be hard to say." Hearing this, Saint Rentoin nodded and said, "My father should have cleaned up the family over the years. Now, it shouldn't be a problem for the Saint Rentoin family to unite as one. I'm just afraid that other forces will deliberately suppress us." Zichen smiled faintly and said, "Then you should be more careful. At worst, you can just keep a low profile. When I return here again, I will solve everything for you. It seems that this is the only way. There's no need to be too deliberate. No one knows that I'm leaving. At most, they'll think that I'm going somewhere to cultivate in seclusion again." In history, no rank 6 martial artist had ever left, so the possibility of an accident happening to the Xingluen family was not high. He told Saint Rentoin so that he could be mentally prepared. After that, Zichen left the Saint Rentoin family. After that, Zichen took to the air and arrived in the sky. With a flash of light, the formation Spirit Elder appeared. The two of them chatted for a while. Then, Zichen went to the court trading area and exchanged all the resources he had. After that, Zichen left the city alone to look for Heavenbreaker. Zichen saw Heavenbreaker at Fina's residence. Before he left, he needed to confirm whether he could return. "The coordinates are clear. If nothing unexpected happens, I'll definitely be able to return." These were Heavenbreaker's words. However, it was obvious that he didn't dare to guarantee anything. Seeing the frown on Zichen's face, Fina said, "Heavenbreaker can break through all restrictions. If the coordinates are clear, he'll definitely be able to return here as long as he spends some time. Of course, it'll be the same when he leaves. The coordinates won't change, right?" Zichen asked worriedly. Fina smiled and said, "It's a soul body I created. You've seen her before. She's closely connected to the laws of this place. She's as clear and bright as a lighthouse in the mortal world. Zichen nodded and said, "All right then. When can we leave?" Heavenbreaker said, "When you fulfill your promise." Fina smiled and said, "Any time." "Then let's have everyone come in first." Zichen turned around and walked out of the room. Then, he opened his own world. The sky immediately darkened and space began to distort. A huge black hole appeared. Fina and Heavenbreaker walked out after him. Then Fina used her soul to transmit messages. One after another, humanoid lifeforms flew into the sky. In addition to these humanoid lifeforms, there were also small spaces compressed by spatial techniques. After these small spaces entered Zichen's world, they disappeared. Then, the things in these small spaces appeared. They were mother nests. Their bodies were huge, their auras surged, and there were many of them. There were countless insect eggs in the surroundings. After they appeared, their bodies glowed again, forming a new spatial power that enveloped themselves. These mother nests were hidden in space, but to Zichen, they were naturally no secret. Looking at the countless insect eggs and mother nests, Zichen was shocked. Originally, he thought that Fina was the only mother nest that could produce God-King level creatures. Now, it seemed that wasn't the case. There were many mother nests that could produce God-King level creatures. We can't take away all the mother nests in this world. We have to leave some behind to maintain the development of this world. Fina's voice sounded from behind Zichen. Back then, they didn't know of my existence. If they knew, they would have thought of ways to destroy me. My strength has long reached the point where I can easily destroy that city. However, in order to maintain the balance and stability of this world, I can't take action. I can only hide these methods and hope that I can leave one day. At this moment, Zichen had taken in many experts. The number of experts was much more than the ones that Zichen had nurtured in the Nightmare faction. Compared to the god race, mother nests were the war machines of this world. While those space-time creatures were flying towards Zichen's world, in another place, the Ant Queen also received the news. Then, she led countless dark heavenly ants and flew towards Zichen's world. After all the dark heavenly ants entered the world, Fina also controlled those space-time creatures to enter Zichen's world. Zichen kept the world and went to look for Su Mengyao and the others. After returning to the city, he found Su Mengyao and the others. They had already exchanged all their contribution points. Then Zichen went to call Tai Jian and everyone left together. After returning to the place where the space-time creatures were overseeing, Fina handed over some matters to her spirit body. Then she entered Zichen's world. Sky Splitter turned into a vast sky and fell into Zichen's hand. During this period, it had devoured 150,000 God King soul essences. Zichen's body flickered with golden light. He pulled open the longbow. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth surged wildly. Under the attention of many space-time creatures, an arrow was formed and pierced through the sky. The arrow landed in the void. The void trembled and distorted, revealing a passage. Swoosh! Chapter 31:26. This time, Zichen only brought Tai Jian with him. That was because he was confident that he could return, so he wasn't in a hurry to bring the others away. Tai Jian and Zichen were on a training trip. Moreover, no one would have guessed that he would leave. Relatively speaking, the Saint Lun family didn't have any problems. A passage appeared in the boundless space-time turbulence. A beast and a man walked out of the passage. The beast had a single horn. It walked in front, and wherever it passed, the turbulence made way for it. It was Heavenbreaker. He no longer transformed into a bow. Instead, he returned to his original form. Zichen followed behind him. "You still haven't found it?" Zichen asked. There was a hint of worry in his voice. There was no time field in this space-time turbulence. Zichen and Heavenbreaker walked for an unknown amount of time. Previously, Heavenbreaker had transformed into a bow to cut through the turbulence. After some time, he revealed his true form and used the horn on his forehead to cut through space. "We don't have the exact coordinates. We can only walk and see. Heavenbreaker spoke. Another beam of light flew out of his horn and cut through another stretch of space-time turbulence. This time, a complete spatial world appeared at the end of the turbulence. Heavenbreaker's eyes lit up and he immediately flew forward. Zichen followed behind. Following a flash of light, they arrived in another world. This was an unfamiliar world. The energy between heaven and earth was very thin. With Zichen's current strength, which was equivalent to that of a 6th-rank divine king, he instantly spread out his spiritual sense and easily enveloped this world. There were no humans living in this world. There were only a few strange beasts with extremely low cultivation levels. The space around him and Heavenbreaker was constantly distorting. Ripples spread out. Wherever the ripples passed, mountains and rocks would all be reduced to dust. One after another, cracks appeared in the void, and the world became very unstable. All the strange beasts in this world instantly prostrated themselves on the ground. They continuously kowtowed in the direction of Zichen and Heavenbreaker. It was as if they were kowtowing to a god. This world's level is too low. We have to leave quickly. Another beam of light flew out from Heavenbreaker's horn. That beam of light tore through space, forming a tunnel. Zichen and Heavenbreaker turned into beams of light and entered the tunnel. Their realms were too high. If they continued to stay in this world, it wouldn't be long before this world collapsed. This was because this world was unable to withstand an existence of such a level. The world's laws were also extremely weak, and they could not even achieve the most basic suppression. Leaving the world, he continued to enter the space turbulence to find the next location. With Zichen's current strength, the terrifying spatial turbulence was no longer enough to kill him. He could pass through it at will. 1. Breaking open another world, Zichen and Heavenbreaker entered. This seemed to be a primitive world. There were still no humans in this world, but there were countless enormous creatures. They looked somewhat similar to the dragon race, but they were clearly not true dragons. In fact, they were not even Western dragons. They could be called dragon beasts. This was an unfamiliar world. The man and the beast did not linger and quickly left. In the following time, they discovered many more worlds. These worlds were all very strange. Some were filled with beasts, while others were filled with oceans. There were all kinds of strange creatures in the oceans that could control water and attack. Zichen had never thought that there would be such worlds in this world. However, these worlds did not seem to belong to the range of life stars, nor were they planets controlled by the God realm. They seemed to have been quietly born in the endless space turbulence. Perhaps in the future these worlds would give birth to their own rules, causing this world to expand endlessly and give birth to many experts. It was also possible that in the endless years, they would be obliterated and disappear in the space turbulence. After a while, Zichen became more and more confident. This was because the time they spent walking in the space turbulence had become very short. They could break open a new space at any time. In the end, the space turbulence disappeared, and countless spaces appeared in front of them. They were like countless space fragments piled together. Heavenbreaker observed these space fragments and said, "Each space fragment is a complete world. Some may record the past, some may record the present, and some may record the future." Although Zichen had comprehended the power of space, he still did not understand the mysterious space techniques. However, he knew about traveling through space and time. "Which space are we going to now?" asked Zichen. "The God realm you mentioned should be very big, right?" asked Heavenbreaker. Zichen said, "It's vast and boundless. In the eyes of the God race, the God realm is the highest world. The God race of the God realm calls themselves the higher life forms." Heavenbreaker looked at the space fragments in front of them and said, "Then it's in the depths. We will find it soon." "If we go back now, can we still go back?" Zichen asked again. He wanted to make sure if he could go back to his original world through this space fragment. "Of course, because the coordinates are like lighthouses. As long as we pay attention, we can still see it." Heavenbreaker stepped forward. The horn released a beam of light again, and a passage appeared in front of them. Zichen did not have a deep understanding of space, So he did not know that in the present world, only Heavenbreaker could take him to this place and see the countless fragments of space and memories. He could casually enter a fragment and affect the future of that world. He could even change the past. This was something that the 9 heavenly gods of the God realm did not possess. At this moment, Zichen was like a traveler in space. He passed through countless spaces and saw countless scenes. There were people, beasts, all kinds of living beings, battles, breakthroughs, and schemes. As he continued forward, Zichen saw an even larger spatial fragment. There were many scenes in it, and the most common ones were of the god race and creatures from another space. Is this the space? Heavenbreaker came to the front of the space and stared at the image inside. That's right, it's here! Zichen was unable to hide his excitement. Let's go! A beam of light appeared in front of Heavenbreaker again. The beam of light transformed into a passage, and he and Zichen walked into it. After sensing the aura of this world, Zichen said with certainty, "That's right, it's here. We're back. This is the God realm?" Heavenbreaker said with disdain. "It's far smaller than the previous world. You call this a higher level world? Can we go back to our original world now?" Zichen asked. Heavenbreaker closed his eyes. After a moment, he opened them and said, "It should be fine." In this way, Zichen was completely at ease. Now, he had to find the 10th realm. Chapter 31:27. Whoosh! Zichen's figure appeared. His divine king aura surged and the world seemed to come to a standstill for a moment. The divine envoys who were fighting stopped and looked up at the sky. Their faces were filled with shock. Even the creatures from another spacetime that didn't have any intelligence stopped and didn't dare to continue fighting. "Greetings, Your Excellency!" Zichen landed and looked at the small team of divine envoys. The divine envoys and the team saluted Zichen in fear. "Which region is this?" Zichen asked. "Ah?" The divine envoys were stunned when they heard this. Zichen pointed at the ground beneath his feet and asked, "Which domain is this?" The small team of divine envoys was at a loss. Seeing that they didn't do it on purpose, Zichen asked again, "Where is this place?" "This is Lord Glenn's territory," the divine envoys in the lead said respectfully. "Lord Glenn is the strongest person in this region. We are all under Lord Glenn's jurisdiction." "Then what is Glenn's cultivation level?" Zichen asked. "He is at the 9th level," the divine envoy said proudly. "Then do you know which region is under Glenn's control in the 10 regions of the Divine Realm?" "The 10 regions of the Divine Realm?" The divine envoy's expressions changed again. "What, you haven't heard of it?" Zichen looked at the divine envoys. Their cultivation levels were very low, and they hadn't been in this world for long. Perhaps they didn't know much about the Divine Realm. "We have heard of it, but the 10 regions of the Divine Realm disappeared 10,000 years ago," the Divine Envoy's leader said. "What?" When Zichen heard this, his expression changed. "The 10 regions of the Divine Realm disappeared 10,000 years ago," the Divine Envoy's leader said again. Seeing that they didn't seem to be lying, Zichen felt that it was inconceivable. He had only left this world for a little over 1,000 years. It hadn't even been 10,000 years. The 10 regions of the Divine Realm had been destroyed 10,000 years ago. Could it be that he and Patian had been walking in the space-time turbulence for several thousand years? "Is this the Divine Realm?" Zichen asked again. The group nodded. Although they were puzzled by the question raised by this lord, they didn't dare to not answer. "Then is there a roll of generals and roll of kings here?" Zichen asked again. "Yes, 108 divine kings and 1,800 divine generals," the leader of the divine envoys said proudly. "Lord Guluin is one of them." When Zichen heard that, he was already completely speechless. Clearly, with the absence of the heavenly god, the situation of this world had completely changed. "Where does Glenn live?" Obviously, he couldn't find out anything from these people, so Zichen decided to ask Glenn. If Guluin was an expert on the General Board, then he must have been in the Divine Realm for more than 10,000 years. He must know what happened back then. These oracles pointed to the place where Lord Glen lived for Zichin. It was a city that was very easy to find and very lively. It was called Galuin City. The formation in the city was not activated, but there were many divine generals in the city. Zichin came to the sky above the city and descended. Who dares trespass on Galuin City? With this shout, one divine general after another soared into the sky, but when they sensed the aura descending from the sky, their expressions changed drastically. An intense pressure appeared in the air and pressed down on the bodies of these divine generals who were in the air. Boom! Their bodies fell to the ground, shattering the stone slabs beneath their feet and kicking up clouds of dust. Everyone in the city looked in this direction with shocked expressions. Where's Glen? After descending, Zichin scanned the city with his spiritual sense and sent a voice transmission. I'm Glen! A figure flew out of the city lord's residence. It was a 9th-rank divine general wearing a suit of general armor. Who are you? How dare you trespass on my city? Galuin, who was wearing his general armor, said coldly as he looked at Zichin. Buzz! Zichin's body flashed with light and his aura began to circulate. Divine General Galen only felt a tremendous pressure coming from the opposite side. His body could no longer stand steadily as he collapsed to the ground with a boom. At the same time, his extremely high-grade general armor creaked as though it could be deformed at any moment from the pressure. Glen paled, his eyes filled with fear. He no longer had any arrogance as he loudly begged for mercy. Your Excellency, spare me! Your Excellency, spare me! Zichin saw the number on Glen's back, 1796. With this ranking, he could fight a group of them alone when he left. He really didn't know where Glen's arrogance came from. The 108 divine generals of the past had now become 1,800. This was too much of a mess. The surrounding divine generals were so frightened that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Just the pressure alone was enough to immobilize a divine general, so they were no match for him. They had long since lost the courage to attack. The pressure on Glen's body instantly disappeared, and Zichen's voice rang out. Let me ask you a few questions. Answer truthfully. Yes. Yes. Your Excellency, please ask away. Glen, who was lying on the ground, repeatedly nodded. The pressure had disappeared, but he did not stand up. Which domain of the 10 domains of the God realm was this? Zichin asked. Glen was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect this question, so he said, The 8th domain of the past. The 8th domain, the domain controlled by Western Shell God? Yes. Western Shell God was Sina's father. Back then, Sina had advised him to die and was extremely unfriendly to him. What's the current structure of the God realm like? Are there still 10 domains? Zichin asked again. No, the current divine world is already divided into many forces. Among them, 108 divine kings occupy 108 regions. Other than that, there are also some adopted sons of heavenly gods and the maternal forces of the heavenly gods' children who have opened up their own regions. Glen said. Which factions occupied the 10th domain back then? Zichin asked again. Glen thought for a moment, then said, It was occupied by many factions. The most famous of them all was the expert on the king rankings, Lauren Man. How do we go to the 10th domain now? Are there teleportation arrays? Glen said. There are, but they are all in the core areas. The teleportation arrays now are not the same as before. They can be opened at any time. The Great War of the God Realm has already caused the God Realm to be torn apart. Teleportation arrays are generally not open to the public. Do you have a map of the God Realm? No. The God Realm is still at war. The various factions are fighting over resources. Our group will gather soon. Aren't you the city lord of this place? Glen laughed bitterly. Now all the factions are under the jurisdiction of those powerful god kings. Those who do not obey have already disappeared from this world. Zichin had expected that the God realm might be in chaos, but he hadn't expected it to be so chaotic. There were battles everywhere. If the gods returned and saw the God realm in this state, what would they do? Or rather, if those god kings dared to wage war on such a large scale and establish their own factions, did it mean that they knew something? That the gods would never return? Chapter 31:28. Zichen asked for the general direction and then used teleportation to leave. He didn't go to the core cities to find the teleportation portals. After countless years of war, the teleportation portals should have been destroyed. The Divine Realm had spent countless years to construct the 10 regions, and it was like a huge net that could be connected at any time through spider silk. However, it had been completely destroyed just like that. The 10 domains were like a plate of loose sand. The god world was infinitely large. Even Heavenbreaker admitted that. Even though Zichen could teleport hundreds of thousands of miles, it would take a long time to reach the 10th domain from here. During this time, he saw many battles. Some were between the god race and the other spacetime, and some were between the god race. In short, the god race was in chaos. In the end, Zichen called out Heavenbreaker and directly broke through space. This was even faster than teleportation. The horn on Heavenbreaker's forehead released a beam of light. The light fell into the void and became a tunnel. Zichen followed Heavenbreaker into it. Just like that, he deliberately let Heavenbreaker control the distance and tried to move within a small range. Otherwise, they would instantly leave this world. When he estimated that he had reached the 10th domain, Zichen started to teleport again and again, trying to find some familiar cities. However, he was disappointed. The 10th domain had changed greatly. He couldn't recognize it at all. Moreover, this single domain was extremely large. Zichen then asked some god race members, but no one knew where the goddess was. After that, Zichen returned to the world and told everyone what had happened. When they heard, they were shocked and worried. Although Wuji and the craftsman ancestor were there, they definitely wouldn't rely on those factions. The flames of war were burning in the god world. He didn't believe that the factions from the life stars would be spared. But the problem is that we can't find the way back, Zichen said helplessly. There are no buildings that we are familiar with, and there are no teleportation portals that we can use. Although we are probably in the 10th domain, the 10th domain is still limitless. We have been searching for a long time, but there is still no clue. Find Divine King Sandini. He's definitely still alive. Find the city he's in, and we can find the way back. The AI, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. Apart from Taijian, Martin, and the others, everyone's eyes lit up. Obviously, this was a good idea. And the reason why the AI immediately thought of Sandini was because he had almost killed her before. Now that he had a direction, everything else became much simpler. It didn't take long for Zichen to find out where Sacred King Sandini was. Not only had he not died in the chaos, he had even become an overlord. After asking around again, Zichen discovered that the area controlled by Sacred King Sandini was precisely the area where Zichen had once been. Zichen immediately set off. After teleporting again and again, he circled around Sacred King Zenith's city. Finally, he saw some familiar places. They were all dilapidated cities whose cores had long been destroyed. A few days later, Zichen saw Tobi City. It was a city that they had once developed, but it had long since been destroyed. Then, he saw the cities of Yue, Bensenlu, and the others. Naturally, all of them had been destroyed. The cities were in ruins, and there were no signs of life. The glory of the past was gone. After arriving here, he had the exact coordinates. Zichen teleported again, heading towards the place where they lived. He had only developed 2 cities. In these 2 cities, there were ancient tree kings overseeing them. Ordinary enemies couldn't do anything to them. However, Zichen didn't have any confidence that they could survive in the chaos. Zichen was very nervous, and so were the others. This was because their friends were here, their roots in this world. After teleporting again and again, they finally arrived at the area that was supposed to be lush with ancient trees. However, it was empty in front of them. The wind blew, and yellow sand flew into the sky. This place had become a desert. The ground was full of potholes, and the traces of a great battle were extremely obvious. Wherever his spiritual sense passed, there was no vegetation, not even creatures from another dimension. Zichen's heart sank to the bottom. His figure flashed again, and he arrived at the center of the battlefield. There was a city there. There were some scattered buildings in the city, but the buildings had long been destroyed. In the center of the city, there was a towering ancient tree that had lost its core. That was Jono's original body. Obviously, Jono was dead. There were no living creatures in the city. Zichen scanned with his spiritual sense and found nothing else. The teleportation array in the city had long disappeared. With a flash of light, Monk and the others walked out. When they saw everything around them clearly, they were stunned. Then, sadness began to spread. Did everyone die in the battle? Martin and the others looked at the ruined surroundings and could guess what had happened. They were silent. "We still have one more city," Su Mengao said. "Let's go and take a look." Under Zichen's lead, the group set off for the second city. Soon, they arrived and saw that it was still a ruined city. In the center of the city, the ancient tree that could also become a king was also dead. "How could this be?" Monk roared angrily. "Which damn guy dared to attack us?" In addition to anger, there was also helplessness. "They can't all be dead," Zichen said in a low voice. "Those misty shadows and giant crocodiles should still be alive. Moreover, the craftsman ancestor and the others have experienced many wars. It's impossible that they didn't take precautions." The others turned to look at Zichen. Their despairing hearts were rekindled with hope. "Let's find a way to go to the Life Star. The flames of war can have spread there. Perhaps they have retreated to the Life Star," Zichen said. This undoubtedly gave them hope. However, it was easier said than done to return to the Life Star. The entire divine world was in chaos. The passages had either disappeared or closed. They couldn't go back to the city that connected to the divine world. Su Mengao said. "Even if they went back, they should have left some people to guard this place or leave some clues for us." "Then let's go back and take a look." The group returned to the dilapidated city. Then, they stayed here and patiently looked for clues that they could leave behind. Time passed day after day. Their patience was worn out. They were full of worries. On a full moon night, moonlight shone, illuminating the world. The surroundings were quiet. Zichen sat cross-legged in the ruined city. He couldn't calm down. The sand outside the city gradually became moist. Then, a thin layer of water vapor rose, turning into a layer of mist. The mist was very thin and lingering. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't notice it. However, Zichen had been paying attention to the surroundings. Thus, the moment the mist appeared, he noticed it and teleported in front of it. It wasn't normal for mist to rise in a dry desert. Zichen's arrival seemed to have stirred up the mist. The mist dispersed and slowly disappeared. "It's me. I'm back," Zichen spoke. His rule energy appeared beside him, falling into the mist. Then, it forcibly gathered the mist into a humanoid creature. Chapter 31-29. Looking at the misty figure, Zichen heaved a sigh of relief. However, when the misty figure saw him, he didn't seem happy. His eyes were filled with fear and confusion. Swoosh! The light of laws around Zichen disappeared. Without the suppression of laws, the misty figure disappeared. As soon as the misty figure disappeared, Tyrant and the others arrived and asked what happened. "I saw the misty figure," Zichen said with a smile. Although it was an unfamiliar misty figure, he still felt a sense of familiarity. The others, who had been tense, also relaxed at this moment. Next, they just had to wait. Wind appeared in the surroundings. There was mist in the wind. It came from all directions and gradually surrounded the place. Looking at the mist, Zichen's rule power appeared once again. The mist quickly took shape and took the shape of a human. "Lord, it's really you!" In front of the humanoid figure stood a tall existence. It was the king of the misty figure. When he saw Zichen, he was very excited. Zichen nodded at the misty figure and said, "How are the others?" The misty figure said excitedly, "Everyone is fine. 10,000 years. We have waited for 10,000 years. Lord has finally returned." Just as the misty figure was speaking, in another direction outside the city, a space suddenly opened and formed a passage. Someone walked out of the passage. The first to walk out was LV Ping. Then, Wuji the craftsman, and those who had stayed back then. Seeing that everyone was unharmed, Zichen let out a sigh of relief. He immediately walked forward and gave LV Ping a hug. "You're finally back." After seeing everyone, LV Ping was incomparably excited. "Seeing this place turned into ruins gave us a fright." "What happened back then?" Zichen asked. "After you left, the divine world fell into chaos. We weren't spared. At first, there were aristocratic families who came to recruit us. We didn't agree. In the end, the divine king came to recruit us. We knew something was wrong, so we made preparations in advance." LV Ping gave a brief account of what had happened that year. Although it was simple, everyone could still feel the danger involved. Just as they were done with their preparations, the battle broke out. Their opponents had come unexpectedly, and their scale was much larger than when the heaven god's children had come. After a simple battle, LV Ping and the rest all retreated. During this period of time, they had completely given up on the ancient trees in the periphery. The misty shadow and giant crocodile had left after the initial battle, and the mother nest had deliberately suffered huge losses. This was all for the sake of everyone's survival. LV Ping had destroyed the teleport formation leading to the Life Star. Next, Jono controlled the battle to continue until countless ancient trees were killed and the tree hearts were dug out. This battle lasted for about 100 years. Their opponents seemed to have the intention of using them to refine weapons. In the end, they killed their way into the city. At that time, Jono's real body had already left, leaving behind only a clone. When the enemy tried to control it, it chose to destroy its soul. Thus, their opponents took the spirit fruit and the Tree King's heart. From then on, LV Ping and the rest had been hiding until today. During this time, LV Ping would send the Misty Shadow to investigate. Because he was worried that the enemy would find out, he would only appear on the night of the full moon. "What's everyone's current realm?" asked Zichen. "The highest is 9th level general. We've been hiding and haven't shown ourselves. We don't have many resources left," said LV Ping. "It doesn't matter. I have many resources here. Do you know which faction attacked you?" "It was God King Zack, but I've already heard that he's under God King Sandini's jurisdiction. Our territory has always been under the control of God King Zenith." Hearing this, Zichen frowned and said, "So it was Sandro who destroyed us." "You could say that." Also, when the two sides were fighting, God King Sandini's side also sent many creatures from another space-time. "We suspect that they also control the mother nest," guessed LV Ping. Hearing this, Zichen's lips curled into a faint smile. "There's no need to worry. I'm just afraid that they don't have the goods. Since everyone is safe, let's call them out. We're going to rebuild the sect." "But..." LV Ping looked at Zichen with some hesitation. "Since we're back, you don't have to worry anymore. God King Sandini, right? Let's settle our old grudges together," Zichen said. "Have Vinyi and Jono been accumulating energy these past few years?" "They have. We've been waiting for this day." LV Ping nodded. Zichen laughed heartily when he heard this. "That's great. Let everyone come out and use our original place. How we were destroyed in the past, we'll rise again now." LV Ping and Zichen had known each other for a long time and knew Zichen's character. Since he said so, he naturally had confidence. LV Ping didn't say anything else and opened the space again to let everyone out. These people had been staying in a unique space all this time. When they heard LV Ping's voice, they saw Zichen's group in the crowd. In an instant, all kinds of excited exclamations sounded. Jolina and the other divines bowed to Yiqian, excitedly calling her goddess. The others came forward and greeted Zichen. Jono turned into a ray of light and came to Zichen's side. He smiled and said, You're finally back. Zichen smiled and replied, there were some problems. You can recover now. Xiao Noa said, is it here? Zichen nodded. Good. Jono turned into a ray of light and flew into the withered tree in the city. After his soul went in, the withered tree began to emit a green light. The originally lifeless dead tree immediately became full of vitality. Spring came to a withered tree. Everyone turned their heads and looked at this scene in surprise. Zichen looked at Jono and said, recover to your peak state first and establish a city. Yes. Jono began to grow. Green vegetation replaced the old bark, and countless branches and leaves grew out. It continued to rise and extend until it became a city of trees. Looking at this city of trees, many people shed tears of excitement. It's been 10,000 years since the city was destroyed. After 10,000 years of waiting, this day had finally come. Continue to develop, there's no need to be afraid. Zichen said in a deep voice. Buzz. Chapter 31:30. While Jono was growing, Zichen looked back at Vigny and said, Vigny, you go too. Develop as you wish. Vigny nodded and turned into a ray of light, flying above Jono. The next moment, space opened one after another, and countless creatures from another space-time surged out like a flood. The ground in the distance was constantly shaking. Jono, who had reached level 9, not only developed more ancient trees, but his level was also extremely high. At present, Jono had already far surpassed the ancient tree king that Zichen had killed before. The city was quickly completed, and tree houses appeared one after another. This place had become a city of trees. Everyone looked at this scene excitedly. Zichen looked at the Misty King in the other direction. His figure flashed and disappeared from this place. The next moment, a thick fog appeared in the forest. The ground became extremely slippery, and it could turn into a swamp at any time. The giant crocodiles were hiding in the swamp. The Misty King and the giant crocodiles were of a very high level, but to the current Zichen, they were much weaker. After everything in the city stabilized, Zichen stepped forward and waved his sleeve. Pieces of supreme crystal appeared and flew into the sky. Zichen said, Vigny, Jono, you too refined the supreme crystal. These supreme crystal were obtained by Zichen when he formed an alliance with Carrie's forces on the first floor. There were a lot of them, but after reaching level 3, he had not used them. He had been using the high-level God King's soul essences. Now that they were all level 9, it was best to use the supreme crystal. If they used the God King's soul essences now, it would be extremely tiring. At the same time, the Misty King in the outside world flew back. Zichen also gave him a lot of supreme crystal. The others can collect their supreme crystal later. Zichen looked up at the sky and said, Vigny, get those creatures out of the forest. Vigny didn't understand what Zichen meant, but he still did as he was told. All the space-time creatures flew towards the outside world. Just as these space-time creatures came out, Zichen opened the world. The city that had been illuminated by the tree houses and Jono's light was now plunged into darkness once more. The auras of God Kings emerged from the darkness one after another. When everyone saw what the thing in the darkness was, their faces were filled with shock. There were countless black ants. Most importantly, all of them were God Kings. Heavens! Countless God Kings! Cries of alarm continuously sounded out, and those who had been quite confused now understood why Zichen dared to rebuild the city, and why he did not fear those factions. With so many divine king-level black ants here, even if another great battle broke out, this would be a city that could never be conquered. Where did you find them? Aren't they too powerful? LV Ping exclaimed. Beside him, Wuji, Craftsman, and the others were also extremely shocked. Due to the lack of resources, they had completely widened the gap between them and Zichen. In fact, the level of any random black ant was higher than everyone here. Everyone was extremely shocked, and they became even more excited. The number of dark heavenly ants was beyond their expectations. There was an endless stream of them. After the dark heavenly ants appeared, they took the initiative to walk out of the city. They formed a group like a well-trained army and they consciously left the city. Then, they walked into the forest without destroying the ancient trees and walked out of the forest. Even so, the dark heavenly ants in the city were still full, as though there would never be an end to them. Swoosh! With a flash of brilliance, Pa-Ji appeared next to Zichen. Zichen looked at Pa-Ji and said, "Tell the Queen Ant that she can leave her original body in the city. As for the location, she can choose for herself." Pa-Ji nodded and communicated with the Queen Ant. With a flash of brilliance, the Queen Ant's original body appeared. It was a huge creature. After it appeared, it glanced at Zichen, then glanced at the surroundings. Its figure flashed once more as it headed underground. "I want to go to the underground space. There's a slight obstruction." The Queen Ant's voice rang in Zichen's mind. "Jono, make way." Zichen hurriedly transmitted his voice. Jono was only a level 9 general. He couldn't withstand the Queen Ant's torment. The Queen Ant might destroy Jono's vitality in an instant. By then, Zichen wouldn't even have a place to cry. Jono's rhizomes covered the underground like a spider web, forming a rule barrier that could prevent the enemy from attacking from underground. At the same time, there was also a rule barrier in the air. However, this level of obstruction was nothing to the Queen Ant. Therefore, the rhizomes immediately withdrew. A loophole appeared in the rule and the Queen Ant entered the depths of the underground through the loophole. Then, it formed a space of its own. An endless stream of dark heavenly ants finally appeared from Zichen's world. The city became bright again and all the dark heavenly ants walked towards the forest outside the city. Jono sensed that these dark heavenly ants didn't stay in the forest. Instead, they left the forest and disappeared from the outside world, sneaking into the underground. As the others couldn't see what was happening outside, they didn't feel anything unusual. However, Jono was very puzzled. Originally, he thought that the reason why Vigny's subordinates left the forest was to make these black ants stay. Now, it seemed like that wasn't the case. Just as Jono was filled with doubts, he saw that Zichen's world didn't close. Other creatures appeared from within. These creatures were very similar to the creatures from the alternate spacetime that Vigny had created previously. However, their levels were very high. Each of them was at the God King realm. There were even more of these creatures from the alternate spacetime. Hence, exclamations sounded again. "What are these? Mother nests?" the craftsman asked. "Yes." Zichen nodded. "But as long as the creatures from the alternate spacetime nurtured by the mother nests reach the general realm, won't they become members of the divine race? These are already God Kings. Why are they still in this state?" The craftsman was very puzzled. Zichen shook his head and said, "I'm not sure either. They should be a higher level life form." "Not a higher level life form. It's the highest level intelligent life form. Did you bring it back to the mother nests?" Vigny's voice sounded in Zichen's mind. He seemed very excited. At that moment, Fina appeared beside Zichen. She looked around and saw the tree city. A hint of surprise flashed across her eyes. Then, her gaze landed on Jono and she said, "Not bad. It's just that your realm is a little too low." Then, her gaze moved again. Her gaze seemed to have penetrated countless spaces and landed on Vigny. She was even more surprised. "I didn't expect you to have such a thing. Can you help it?" Zichen asked. This was Vigny's request. At this moment, he was very excited. However, he didn't dare to speak to Fina directly. This was because in his eyes, Fina was like an ordinary person seeing a king. The difference in status between the two was too great. "No problem." Fina nodded and said, "You give me the resources, and I'll give you the method. It won't take long for it to awaken and ascend." Chapter 31-31. Leave? Fina turned to Zichen and said, "That's not what we agreed on back then. I said I would fight for you. You don't have to do that. You agreed to help Vigny. That's the greatest help you can give me," Zichen said. Fina tilted her head and looked at Zichen. She blinked and said, "You don't dislike me, do you?" How is that possible? Zichen emphasized. For someone like Fina, he wouldn't be able to get her even if he begged her. How could he dislike her? Since that's the case, then it's settled. I'll go outside and take a look. My subordinates will stay here and listen to your orders. If you're in danger, I'll appear, Fina said. Is that okay? Zichen didn't want to force Fina to stay by his side and work for him just because he was the one who brought her out. He knew very well that Fina would be very useful if she stayed by his side. That was because she represented an endless army of divine kings. There's nothing wrong with that. Even if you chase it away, it won't leave. Heavenbreaker walked out of Zichen's world. Boring. Can't you just let me talk? Let's go. A ray of light appeared from Fina's body. This ray of light flew to where Vigny was hiding. Before Vigny could get hold of this ray of light, Fina's figure had already disappeared. I'm sleepy. Don't disturb me if there's nothing, Heavenbreaker said and walked into a wooden house. He was very casual, as if he was in his own home. The others still hadn't recovered from their shock. This time, Zichen returned. Not only did he become stronger, but he also brought so many powerful existences with him. With such battle strength, he indeed had the qualifications to settle down and start anew. These powerful space-time creatures all hid in the forest. Zichen turned around to look at the excited crowd and said, All right, the next level is level 9. Come to me to collect resources and try to break through to the God King realm as soon as possible. Zichen brought back a lot of resources this time, and these resources were specially prepared for everyone. Can the teleport formation connect to life stars? Zichen looked at LV-Ping and asked. LV-Ping nodded and said, Yes, I only destroyed the teleportation array on one of the nodes. It won't take long for it to be restored. Zichen said. Then let's begin. From now on, we will be taking root here. Regardless of whether Heaven God could return or not, Zichen now had the strength to protect himself. He no longer had to live a life of caution, worrying about all sorts of schemes and invasions. It could be said that this time, he had truly taken root in the God world. He now had a foundation, and the power to dominate. After that, Zichen distributed Supreme Crystal to all level 9 divine generals so that they could cultivate and break through. In one night, a city of trees appeared. The desert turned into a forest, and the ancient trees in the forest were so lush that they covered the sky. Zichen and the others were in this city, but they did not feel anything strange. However, the others in this area felt a surge of energy between heaven and earth. It could be said that for the entire night, the energy between heaven and earth was turbulent, as if some sort of rare treasure had appeared. In this area, all the God race members noticed the abnormality in the sky. They all guessed that a rare treasure had appeared. That night, many God race members set off in that direction. They did not see the rare treasure, but they saw countless space-time creatures and an oasis in the desert. Some God race members were puzzled, but even more were shocked. They remembered that many years ago, there was a popular faction here. It was said that it was founded by a son of God. That faction was besieged by other sons of God, but they won every time. It was not until 10,000 years ago, when the Son of God left, that the faction was destroyed. But now, it seemed that the faction had recovered, and in a single night. It was shocking. There were also some who had a clearer understanding of what had happened 10,000 years ago. Besides being shocked, they were also excited. This was because the oases here were all opportunities. All of the ancient trees had tree hearts. That was an extraordinary opportunity. Therefore, they quickly retreated, wanting to tell His Excellency about this. The leader of the faction that had destroyed all the ancient trees was called Zack. Back then, he was a level 5 God King. Now, he was a level 6 God King. Of course, he would not do it himself. Everything was done by his subordinates. His direct superior was none other than Sacred King Sandini. As the Son of God, Sandini had long since reached the level 9 God King realm. Now, he was one of the 108 God Kings. That day, Zack heard the report from his subordinates. He was surprised that the desert had turned into an oasis, but he did not care. Although there were some opportunities there, he did not care about them at all. He refused the request to investigate personally. With a wave of his hand, he casually arranged for a level 1 god king to lead people to destroy the oasis. Zichen's faction had recovered, but before he could take revenge, the enemy had come. On the third day of his expansion, a god race army and some space-time creatures arrived outside his territory. They attacked the space-time creatures on the periphery. When he heard this, Zichen's lips curled into a cold smile. "I haven't come looking for you, but you've come knocking on my door. Then let's start here." He did not give an order to the Queen Ant. He only gave some instructions to the space-time creatures brought by Fina. After that, he did not say anything else. Now, Zichen could guarantee that this was a city that would never be conquered. The powerhouse leading the team this time was a level 1 god king called Mars. He knew this area well. He had participated in the destruction of this place. He was interested in the opportunities that Lord Zack did not care about because these tree hearts were different. If there were enough of them, he could go to the core city and exchange them for opportunities for god kings. He led the team here, and when he saw the boundless forest, there was an obvious change in his eyes. His mood became excited. Looking at this boundless sea of trees, he seemed to see his own path of advancement. "Kill!" He waved his hand and shouted. The powerhouses and spacetime creatures he brought charged forward and clashed with Zichen's spacetime creatures. In the air, Juan Yipin's Mars led a group of level 9 divine generals and headed straight for the forest. Before the army reached here, he could not wait to get more tree hearts. However, as soon as he approached the ancient forest, he felt a dangerous aura. This caused him to stop abruptly and look down in shock. The level 9 divine generals who came with him also stopped and looked ahead in surprise. Space-time creatures rushed out. There were only 2 of them. Their nervous mood instantly relaxed. It was common knowledge that space-time creatures were all below divine messengers. Chapter 31-32. The 2 space-time creatures that rushed out were Juan Yipin's level, which was equivalent to a godly king in this world. They rushed forward, fought, and devoured. The battle ended quickly. Although they were both at the same level, the space-time creatures had a stronger grasp of the laws. Hence, they were much stronger than a godly king of the same level. This was because the godly kings in this world had yet to awaken. The rank 9 and Mars became the food of the 2 space-time creatures. After devouring them, they returned to the Sea of Trees. The battle in the distance was still going on. Someone noticed that their leader was killed and exclaimed in fear. Without a leader, the battle became one-sided. These people could not win, and could only run. The thick fog rolled and the misty shadow came to the battlefield, and reaped the lives of these gods. The desert turned into a swamp. Bubbles bubbled and soil splashed everywhere. Giant crocodiles rushed out from below, and killed the space-time creatures one after another. This battle lasted for a long time. More than 90% of the enemies were killed. The remaining 10% of the gods fled in fear. The space-time creatures that came were all killed. This was only the first battle. Zichen did not want to kill them all. Moreover, a battle of this level would not help the Dark Heavenly Ant or Fina's space-time creatures to grow. He planned to wait a little longer. Zack soon received news about the battle. Mars was killed in an instant. This made his face turn ugly. Although the other party was one of the commanders under him who was not considered important, he was still a godly king. How could he be killed in an instant? Seems like they came prepared. Zack snorted and said, "Ask Pidway to lead a team. If the other party is really capable, remember to recruit them and use them for us." The god who passed on the message answered and left. Compared to Mars, who was insignificant, Pidway was Zack's right-hand man. This was because he was a level 5 godly king. In other regions, this level was enough to be the overlord of a force. The number of troops that Pidway could control was dozens or even hundreds of times more than the dead Mars. He led an army of otherworldly creatures, a divine race army, and several god kings to Zichen's location. There had been a great battle here before, but there were no corpses left. Pete did not care about this at all, because creatures from another dimension were very good at cleaning up. "Sir, what should we do now?" a god king asked as he looked at the sea of trees on the horizon. "Let's start the war directly. When they can't hold on any longer, they will naturally come out and ask for peace. At that time, we will have the real initiative. If we directly go up and recruit them, we will be very passive, and we will also mistakenly think that we are very strong." With these words, the army began to march forward. Countless creatures from the other spacetime charged forward, slamming into the other spacetime creatures. "Let these cannon fodders fight first. Our people will fight later," Peter said indifferently. He did not step forward. Just like that, he sat down with these god kings and drank with their subordinates. There was a battle at the front and a drinking party at the back. The atmosphere was clearly different. The other Shin clan troops also stayed in the rear and did not join the battle. The number of spacetime creatures was endless, so they were cannon fodders. No matter how many of them died, it would not hurt. But these Shin clan troops could not. Although their combat strength was tyrannical, to cultivate one, it would take countless years. They were elite troops and could not be wasted like this. In fact, in the depths of Peter's heart, he did not want to have these elite troops. He preferred the spacetime creatures. They were cannon fodders, endless in numbers. This way, the battle would be enjoyable. They were like machines born for war. Sometimes Peter would mutter in his heart. It was so troublesome for the Shin clan to cultivate powerhouses. How could they be on par with the spacetime creatures? They had such war machines. Once they went all out, he believed that they would have destroyed the Shin clan and ruled the heavenly realm. After all, in these years, the forces with the mother nest had all won. When Peter was drinking with his subordinates outside the battlefield, Zichin had already received the news. He was drinking with Monk and the others. For this battle, he was not in a hurry. Because he did not lack resources for the time being. He had just returned, so he let everyone rest and adapt for a period of time. So this battle, under the situation where the leaders of both sides were not in a hurry, lasted for a month. In this month, the spacetime creatures were involved in the battle. Both sides had suffered countless casualties. Finishing the last mouthful of wine in the wine pot, Peter stood up and looked at the battle of cannon fodders in front of him. His eyes immediately became sharp. "It seems that they will not shed tears until they see the coffin. Everyone attack! Advance into the dense forest and destroy all the ancient trees!" Peter's aura surged. The aura of a level 5 divine king caused the world to lose its color. "Kill!" There was a loud shout. The Shin clan members who had not participated in the battle since they arrived, charged forward. They were like a sharp blade, cutting the torrent formed by the spacetime creatures, and went deep into the forest. At the same time, Peter moved forward from the sky and flew directly into the ancient forest. "I'll go and drag their leader out." He flashed directly into the forest. During this time, his powerful aura surged. The ancient trees did not dare to attack him. After more than 10 miles, a light appeared in front of Peter, blocking his way. Seeing the figure in the light, Peter was stunned. It was a half-human, half-beast. He looked extremely ugly, but the aura on his body was very strong. He was a level 5 divine king. His expression changed slightly. There was a bad feeling in his heart. Whoosh! The half-human, half-beast rushed towards him, and a powerful force surged out. Peter shouted angrily. A light flashed in his hand, and a long sword appeared. He slashed at the half-human, half-beast's neck. A strange power of rules appeared from the half-human, half-beast's body. It seemed to form a defense, blocking the attack. Boom! At the same time, the half-human, half-beast threw a punch, accompanied by a roar of energy. Peter was sent flying backward. Flying backward and coughing up blood, Peter was shocked. He did not expect the opponent to be so strong. A hint of fear appeared in his heart. He had an impulse to turn around and run. Suddenly, a shrill scream sounded behind him. Hearing that it was the voice of his subordinate, his expression changed again. Whoosh! The half-human half-beast, who was also a level 5 divine king, attacked Peter again. Chapter 31-33. A grade 5 against a grade 5, one had awakened the laws while the other had not. Even though Pete had rich combat experience, the difference in combat strength was still an insurmountable gap. The battle ended quickly. Pete fell into a pool of blood and his corpse was quickly devoured by the creatures from the alternate dimension. On the ground where the battle took place, huge holes appeared one after another. The creatures from the alternate dimension fell into the holes. The dark heavenly ants were waiting for them at the bottom of the holes. The divine tribe elite troops sensed something amiss and chose to retreat. Misty Shadow and Giant Crocodile chased after them while a dark heavenly ant circled behind them. When they charged out and saw the black mass of dark heavenly ants in front of them, and every one of them was at the Divine King realm, they were in complete despair. The battle that lasted for a month had ended. The troops that Pete brought were completely annihilated. In the city, Zichin put down his wine cup as a cold glint flashed across his eyes. He did not have the ambition to rule the divine world, but he had to take revenge for the annihilation back then. Divine King Zack was enraged when he heard the news. The loss of Pete this time had hurt him deeply. Damned guy, I'm going to meet him personally. Bring the left and right team with me. Zack decided to make a trip there personally. The left team was a king's team. They were all made up of first-level divine kings. He had nurtured them for many years. The right team was an assassination team. They were also made up of divine kings, but they were the best of the best. They were few in number and specialized in assassination. Other than the left and right teams, he had many elite troops such as the Divine General Army, Divine Tribe Army, ordinary divine messengers and the creatures from the alternate dimension. For the gathering of the army, Zack mobilized more than 60% of his troops. The rest continued to guard the city. The army advanced in a straight line. After a few days, they arrived outside the forest. Zack looked ahead with a cold glint in his eyes. Who's the leader here? Show yourself! His voice was like thunder. It reverberated in the wilderness and entered the forest. Zichin, who was sitting with Monk and the rest, stood up and turned to look outside the forest. Swoosh! In the next moment, his figure disappeared. Tyrant and the others also flew toward the outside world. This was their first battle after returning to this world. At the same time, it was also the signal for them to start a war of revenge. His voice reverberated in all directions as a powerful godly king's aura descended. The creatures from the alternate space-time below could not move at all. Glancing at those cannon fodders, Zack's eyes were filled with disdain. He could kill countless of these cannon fodders, but he was more concerned about the experts of this force. A ray of light appeared in front of him, and the light transformed into Zichin. Behind Zichin, Tyrant and the others appeared. You're the leader here? Zack stared at Zichin and frowned. That's right, Zichin lightly said. His aura was in a restrained state, so Zack could not sense it. At the same time, Monk and the others behind had deliberately suppressed their auras because they had reawakened their laws. Zack, who had yet to awaken, couldn't sense them. You've got guts. You dare to attack our people? Seeing that the other party was acting strangely, Zack still didn't give in. Your backer should be Sandra, right? Zichin lightly said. How dare you disrespect an expert on the king ranking? Zack angrily shouted. Zichin's lips curled into a disdainful smile. There were only 36 experts on the king ranking back then, and I didn't see him ranked on it. Back then, you must have received Sandra's order to destroy us, right? Seeing that Zack was about to say something, Zichin said, There's no need to deliberately explain. I'm just telling you. It doesn't matter. A life for a life. Not only will you die, but your force will also be destroyed. After you die, it will be Sandra's turn. Zack narrowed his eyes and stared at Zichin. He coldly said, With just you? Turn around and look behind you, Zichin said with a smile. Zack's face revealed a hint of mockery. Do you think I'm an idiot? You dare to show off this trick in front of me? When this lord uses this kind of trick. Zichen's expression became even more disdainful and full of ridicule. Before Zack could finish his words, cries of alarm rang out from all around. Zack subconsciously turned around and saw that many black ants had appeared in the distance. These ants had completely surrounded the army he had brought with him. After sensing the aura of these black ants, his pupils suddenly shrank and his expression changed greatly. Godly kings! Zack involuntarily cried out in alarm. He turned to look at Zichen again, his eyes filled with disbelief. Those countless black ants were actually godly kings, and not just at the first level. At this moment, a chill appeared in his heart. He was secretly angry that he had rashly come here. The other party was hiding such a powerful force. Their losses would definitely be great. Now he finally understood why Peter's army had been completely wiped out. You only have one chance to live. Let's see if you can grasp it. Just as Zack was shocked and thinking about how to minimize his losses, he heard Zichen speak again. A long saber appeared in his hand. The long saber was black and had a scabbard. If you can survive my attack, I'll let you live, Zichen said. Humph. Zack snorted coldly. His face was filled with anger. He felt that he was being looked down upon because his opponent was only at the 6th level. They were at the same level, but he dared to boast so shamelessly. Zichen looked at him and smiled. Light circulated around his body. The aura of a 6th-level godly king was completely released. There was another name for this level. It was called the 6th level. Whoosh! He charged forward. Light circulated around his body. Other than the yin-yang light, there was also the radiance of the lightning body. Zack felt a powerful aura coming from the opposite side. It was as if a peerless beast was pouncing on him. This aura made him feel an endless chill. His expression changed drastically. He immediately mobilized all the energy in his body to form a defense. The long saber was unsheathed. A cold light flashed. When the light faded, Zichen was behind Zack. The long saber was already back in its scabbard. Zack stood behind Zichen. His expression was frozen. The light that was released from his body gradually faded away. There was a diagonal cut on his body. His eyes were wide open and filled with horror. His soul aura was dissipating. The surroundings were silent. Everyone looked at the scene in shock. A 6th-level godly king was killed just like that. How was this possible? They were at the same level. How could he be defeated in one move? Zichen's gaze swept across the surroundings. The eyes of the gods were filled with fear. He waved his hand and said, "Do it! Leave no one alive!" The dark heavenly ants guarding the periphery launched an orderly attack under the command of the Ant King. Chapter 31-34. Actually, these people could be recruited, but Zichen didn't recruit them because he wasn't familiar with them and couldn't guarantee their loyalty. Plus, he didn't lack a fighting army, so he chose to destroy them. Whether it was the creatures from another space-time or the dark heavenly ants, they needed energy to grow. These enemies were the energy they needed to grow. Compared to the trial world, the quality of this world's energy was very low, but it won in terms of quantity. The enemies were almost endless. The dark heavenly ants attacked in full force. Under such circumstances, no one could escape. Whether it was the king-class teams or the god kings who were good at assassination, it was the same. They were all wiped out. The battle ended. This time, Zichen didn't stop. He led the army of creatures from another space-time and advanced towards Zack's forces. The dark heavenly ants hid underground, waiting to attack at any time. Monk and the rest followed Zichen to battle. Misty Shadow and the giant crocodiles were also on the battlefield. This time, Zichen chose to take the initiative to attack. This region was completely ruled by God King Zack, and God King Zack was also God King Sandini's subordinate. The relationship between God King Sandini and Zichen was obviously not friendly. Therefore, Zichen did not hesitate at all. Everywhere he passed, one city after another was destroyed. After the cities were destroyed, Zichen left behind a portion of the resources in the cities. The rest were devoured by the creatures from another space-time and the dark heavenly ants. Zichen's attack speed was very fast. When God King Sandini returned and heard the news, half of the region ruled by God King Zack had already been destroyed. In the end, the place where Zichen went was already empty. He could only devour the city core. In a huge plain, Zichen's army was blocked. There were even more creatures from another space-time and countless celestials. Every celestial was at least a god general. Naturally, there were many god kings among them. In the past, the god race and the celestials were eternal enemies. Many years ago, Zichen controlled the Mother Nest to fight. It was already a very impressive thing that shook the world. But this time, Zichen realized that the god race and the creatures from another space-time were no longer enemies. In every battle, he could see the figures of the creatures from another space-time and the celestials. In the past, the gods could not control the Mother Nest at all. How could they control it this time? What exactly happened in the god realm? The number of soldiers at the front far exceeded Zichen's troops, but they did not attack immediately. Instead, a person flew towards them. Seeing that person, Zichen's expression didn't change. He also flew forward. "It really is you!" After seeing Zichen, the person in front spoke. It was God King Sandini, who had interacted with Zichen many times. He was a 9th-grade god king and was also a famous expert in the divine world. "You actually managed to come back after going to that place. This is truly surprising!" Sacred King Sandini exclaimed. "You know where I went?" Zichen looked at him. "Who doesn't know about the godly king's ultimate smelting trial ground? But there's another name for that place. I'm afraid you don't know it. It's called the God King's Tomb. None of the god kings who entered were able to come out. Otherwise, this world would have long been occupied by the god kings." Zichen's heart trembled. He frowned. If it was the god king's tomb, why would the celestial gods send Ichien and Xian Lin there? But he quickly guessed the reason. If they didn't go there, what awaited them was certain death. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, they would have to hide for an indefinite period of time, never to rise again. It seemed the celestial god had anticipated the chaos of the god realm when he left. "I didn't think you'd be able to come back. This is truly surprising." Sander sighed. Zichen coldly said, "I also didn't think a dignified 9th-grade god king like you would attack a faction without even a 1st-grade god king." Sander said, "This region needs to be unified. If you don't accept the invitation, you can only face destruction." Zichen said, "That's why I came back for revenge. It's only right and proper." Sander's gaze fell on the creatures behind Zichen. He looked at the space-time creatures and said, "Although I know you have other tricks up your sleeve, your path of revenge won't go too far. This region is under my control. This is the general trend. You're too arrogant. This isn't arrogance, this is self-confidence. Absolute self-confidence. Moreover, you'll never understand what it means to be the general trend. The era of celestial gods is over. This is a brand new world, and the new rules will be determined by us." Sander laughed. "Don't worry, I won't use my absolute power to suppress you. Since this is war, we'll follow the rules of war. Now enjoy this battle." With that, Sander retreated. As a 9th-grade god king, he really didn't attack Zichen. This greatly surprised Zichen. In his opinion, when he met Sander, the god king would be flustered and exasperated by the disastrous losses. He might even try to kill him, and he was prepared for the god king to act. Unexpectedly, Sander didn't make a move. After he retreated, the space-time creatures used as cannon fodder took the initiative to attack. At the same time, the celestials and divines also came over. Zichen didn't hold back. As these space-time creatures charged forward, the dark heavenly ants emerged from the ground. The aura of countless god kings surged, causing the world to lose its color. Sander was a little surprised to see this, and even a hint of shock flashed through his eyes. However, he still didn't attack Zichen. Instead, he retreated further away. The god kings who came with him to the battlefield took a look at the battlefield and left one after another. Countless dark heavenly ants participated in this battle, and Zi-Chin won as expected. He continued forward and destroyed the city. His steps didn't stop as he continued forward. God King Sandini returned to his mansion and saw a middle-aged man. Sandini looked at the middle-aged man and said, "The other side also has a type of war machine. It's very high grade. The lowest grade is at the God King level." "What do you mean, God King?" The middle-aged man looked at Sander. "If we don't use our full strength, my men won't be able to defeat them. Send your men out. Didn't you always say that this kind of battle isn't exciting at all, and there's no difficulty at all? Now, the difficult part is here," said Sander. "I'll go to the battlefield to take a look. If it's really an exciting battle, we won't disappoint you, God King." The middle-aged man left Sander's residence and entered the battlefield alone. Then, he saw the massacre caused by the dark heavenly ants from afar. Seeing that the weakest dark heavenly ants were God Kings, a strange glint flashed through the middle-aged man's eyes. The highest intelligent life form? This is interesting. Seems like it's time to get serious. Chapter 31-35. After observing the battlefield, the middle-aged man returned to Sacred King Sander's city. Sacred King Sander was in his residence. Seeing the middle-aged man return, he asked, "How was it?" The middle-aged man smiled. "We found a highly intelligent life form." "Like you?" Sacred King Sander asked. The middle-aged man shook his head. "No, it's not an ordinary intelligent life form. Even among us, it's a very high-level one." The God King's eyes lit up when he heard this. The reason why he was able to rise so quickly and stand out among the God Kings of the God Realm was not only because of his own strength, but also because of the other races represented by the middle-aged man. They were like the most terrifying war machines in the world, always with an endless supply of troops. Sacred King Sander knew very well that the other races were divided into ranks. The higher one's rank, the higher one's status, and the higher the level of the creatures they created. "Have your people already gone?" Sacred King Sander asked. "They've already gone. I believe there will be news soon," the middle-aged man said. "That's great." Sacred King Sander laughed. In truth, he was not happy at all. He was only cooperating with the middle-aged man, not master and servant. In his opinion, this kind of relationship was very unreliable. He was very annoyed. If he had known Zi-Chin had this kind of trick, he would have gone alone. Now it was too late for regrets. The other races had already made their move, so he had no part to play. Outside the ancient forest, many beings from another space-time appeared. In this world, they were called Celestials. The weakest Celestial was a general. At this time, countless Celestials appeared outside the forest, heading in a straight line. Shwa! 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 Countless Celestials rushed into the forest, but they did not cause any powerful fluctuations. Like clay oxen entering the sea, they disappeared without a trace. Behind them were many Tian clans, and among them, there would naturally be divine kings. They looked at the silent forest and frowned, as if this was different from their original plan. At this time, thousands of Celestials had already entered. A battle should have broken out long ago. Could it be that this forest was just for show and had no fighting strength? Boom! There was a vibration in front, but it was only one sound. Then everything returned to normal. "Go inside and take a look." The Sky Race leader who was in charge of leading the group waved his hand and said to the God Kings. They nodded, and then followed the divine generals and the celestial race into the depths. Once they entered the forest, it was completely quiet. However, the faint smell of blood in the air made them feel extremely uneasy. As they continued to venture deeper, they did not encounter any danger. In fact, they could even see people moving in front of them. However, what puzzled the divine kings of the Tian clan was, where did the smell of blood come from? Also, where did the previous battle fluctuations come from? In the next moment, their vision blurred, and they discovered that they couldn't see anything. The leader who was waiting outside looked at the quiet surroundings and felt a sense of panic in his heart. He said loudly, "Did you find anything?" Apart from the rustling of leaves, there was no other sound in the forest. "Where is he?" The leader raised his voice again. "Hurry up and reply." After saying these words, his forehead was already full of cold sweat, and a strong sense of fear emerged in his heart. He was a sixth-stage divine king, so he shouldn't be afraid. "Do it!" he shouted again, and his voice spread in all directions. The divine generals who were trying to rush into the forest all stopped and attacked the forest in front of them. At this moment, the dark world was illuminated by all kinds of energy, and energy fluctuations rang out. The ancient trees lit up one after another, and their branches began to extend, either attacking or defending. Hearing the energy fluctuations that were no longer quiet, the leader, who was drenched in cold sweat, felt slightly relieved. "Kill your way in." He stood outside and did not take any further action. He only watched as his subordinates entered the forest. At this moment, the forest was like a black hole. All the celestial race who entered seemed to have fallen into a bottomless black abyss. After all the people behind him had entered the forest, he was shocked to find that there was still not much movement in the forest. Occasionally, there would be some small waves. A strong sense of fear emerged in the sixth-stage divine king's heart, and he subconsciously wanted to escape. Just as he turned around, he saw a person standing behind him. Looking at the existence in front of him who clearly belonged to the celestial race, the sixth-stage leader shouted, "Who are you?" "The person who wants your life." The sixth-stage aura erupted. A sixth-stage divine king against a sixth-stage divine king. The battle between the same level quickly ended. The middle-aged man stayed in Divine King Sanders' city, where he had a special residence. At this moment, he was waiting for good news. Zichen would definitely not bring the Ant Queen with him when he fought with those black ants. His goal was to capture the Ant Queen and control it. He saw that the highest level of those black ants was only level 5, so he was very confident. Not long after, the news came. However, it was not good news, but bad news. The celestial race team that went forward was completely annihilated. How is this possible? When the middle-aged man heard the news, he immediately sat up in disbelief. However, the news that came back was obviously not fake. This caused his expression to become extremely ugly. He was unable to understand what was going on. Could it be that Zichen was still holding back, and there were even stronger experts that he had not sent out? Just as those celestial races were attacking Zichen's forest city, Zichen was still advancing triumphantly. Wherever he passed, one city after another was destroyed. He did not occupy them, only destroyed them, and then plundered their resources to allow the dark heavenly ant to grow. He already knew about the attack on the city, but he did not care. Now, his city had long become an unconquerable city, unless a celestial god personally made a move. However, there were no celestial gods in this world. In a situation where he did not have to worry about the rear, Zichen naturally attacked without any worries. He did not seek to occupy a large territory. He only wanted revenge. On the battlefield, countless creatures from another space-time were killed. This battle was not so much a battle with the divine race, but rather a battle with the creatures from another space-time. Before Divine King Sander could form an effective defense, Zichen had already conquered Zack's forces in an extremely short period of time. In a short period of time, a force was conquered. Zichen's rise shook the entire region. For a moment, the attention of the other major forces also fell on Zichen's side. Chapter 31-36. In the previous battles, as long as the dark heavenly ants appeared, the battlefield would be under Zichen's control and the battle would end in a short while. Of course, it was a complete victory. However, this time, Zichen felt threatened. Because there were many divine kings in front of him. These divine kings were all from the divine race. There were many of them, and they were not any weaker than the dark heavenly ants that he exposed in the previous battle. In addition to these divine race, there were many divine kings in another direction. They also formed an army of divine kings. The army of creatures from the alternate space-time, the army of divine envoys, and the army of divine generals appeared one after another. The entire place was filled with countless figures. This was the biggest counterattack that Zichen had encountered along the way. With Zichen's current strength, it was impossible for him to win this battle. Divine King Sandini appeared again. However, he was still watching from afar like a general commanding the battlefield. After the order was given, the army moved out like a black torrent, sweeping towards the battlefield. Zichen glanced at Paji, who was beside him. Paji passed on a new order. Dark heavenly ants appeared from the ground again. This was all the hidden forces in this battle. Seeing these hidden dark heavenly ants, Divine King Sandini's expression changed. Even the middle-aged man beside him had a change of expression. He was extremely shocked. When he and Sandini unified this region, they did not encounter any large-scale resistance. This did not make him feel excited at all. However, the number of enemies before them was too great. Especially the number of divine kings, it actually exceeded the number of ordinary creatures from the alternate space-time. This is definitely the highest level life form. The middle-aged man looked at the battlefield and said, "He will become our biggest threat in the future. We have to kill him now." Divine King Sandini frowned and said, "Now? That's right," the middle-aged man said in a deep voice. "With the highest level life form, he is the biggest threat among us. If we don't kill him now, there will be endless troubles in the future." Divine King Sandini nodded and then waved his hand, signaling a level 7 Divine King to come forward. The battle below was still ongoing. The level 7 Divine King charged towards Zichen from the sky. Looking at the incoming level 7, Zichen did not move. Instead, the monk beside him transformed into a beam of golden light and went forward. He had never encountered a true enemy the entire time, and had long since become impatient. He held the light shield in his left hand and the demon's subduing pestle in his right as he charged towards the enemy. He was at level 6 while the enemy was at level 7. With a loud boom, the level 7 enemy was sent flying by him. The monk let out a hearty laugh and leaped forward in a flash. The demon's subduing pestle in his hand smashed down. Clang! The 7th grade Divine King blocked the attack with his weapon. Along with a clanging sound, the weapon was sent flying. In the next moment, this 7th grade Divine King was sent flying. Seeing this one-sided battle, Sacred King Sandini's expression changed slightly. He waved his hand again, and another level 7 expert flew out. Back when Zichen was still a god general, his subordinates were already capable of fighting above their level. Who would have thought that they would still be able to do the same after reaching the god king level? This time, he had finally learned his lesson. More level 7 god generals charged towards Zichen. Behind Zichen, the level 6 experts rushed forward to fight with the enemy. Zichen did not make a move. Instead, Pa Ji controlled the other dark heavenly ants to fight. Su Mengyao and the rest were overseeing the city and did not come out with him. "Send a level 8 expert!" Sacred King Sandini's eyes flashed with a cold light. A level 8 expert was second only to a level 9 expert. Their status in the realm of the gods was extremely high. This level 8 expert was a burly man. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he charged towards Zichen. Zichen still did not charge forward. However, at this moment, he made other moves. A longbow appeared in his hand. He pulled the bowstring, and the energy of heaven and earth gathered towards the longbow. An energy arrow was formed. The sound of the arrow piercing through the air could be heard. The arrow tore through the space, leaving a black crack in the air. It arrived in front of the level 8 expert, and pierced through his body. Seeing this arrow, the level 8 expert roared. He held his weapon tightly and slashed forward. Poof! As the arrow light flew past, the level 8 expert stopped in his tracks. The weapon in his hand was broken into two, and there was a bloody hole in his chest. The level 8 expert looked down at the bloody hole. His eyes flashed with horror as he lost all signs of life. The battle below did not stop at all because of the death of a level 8 expert. A large number of divine kings were dying at every moment. Zichen held the longbow in his hand and looked at Sacred King from afar. His expression seemed to be saying, "You can come up and try." Sacred King Sandini's expression was extremely ugly. He did not expect a level 8 expert to be killed so easily. In this case, even a level 9 expert might not be able to gain any advantage. The middle-aged man who had been watching the battle said, "It seems like we have to retreat first. The opponent is ferocious. If we go all out, we will suffer great losses. Then what should we do?" Sacred King Sandini asked. "There are two ways. One is to acknowledge his existence. The other is to join forces with other forces," said the middle-aged man. "It's impossible to acknowledge him. He is determined to fight me. He must die. As for joining forces, that is a good suggestion." With that said, Sacred King Sandini ordered the army to retreat. Just as they were leaving, Shadowless, who had been standing in front of them all this time, returned to Zichen's side and informed him of their conversation. "Are they joining forces?" Zichen frowned. If that was the case, then it was time for him to retreat. After this battle, he knew that there were other races from another dimension standing behind the gods. Moreover, this race was led by a broodmother. A broodmother's function was almost the same as an ant queen. He could start a long battle with just one ant queen, but the enemy had many broodmothers. If the battle continued, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. "We're also retreating." Shadowless had already informed him that Sacred King Sandini would not tolerate him. Sacred King Sandini would definitely join forces with other forces to attack him. Rather than fight like this, it was better to choose defense. That way, he could concentrate all his forces. Just like that, Zichen's army retreated. This time, he had destroyed countless cities and killed countless of Sacred King Sandini's subordinates. Sacred King Sandini was taken aback by the news of the retreat. The middle-aged man beside him said, "They must be worried that their base will be attacked again. That's why they chose to retreat." During this time, Zichen's base had been under constant attack. More and more powerhouses had arrived. "That's fine. We'll just lead the army and kill them," Sacred King Sandini sneered. He turned to the middle-aged man and said, "Are you sure you'll help me?" "Of course." The middle-aged man nodded. "Why?" asked Sacred King Sandini. "It involves a great secret of the God realm. We don't know the specifics, but we'll do everything in our power to help you. I hope you'll be the final victor," said the middle-aged man. "That way, we'll have a chance to rise." The middle-aged man didn't say what the secret was, and Sacred King Sandini didn't ask. The time wasn't right. Chapter 31-37. This used to be the 10th domain of the God realm. Aside from the rising God King Sandini, there were other God Kings here. Compared to the other 9 domains, the 10th domain didn't have too many powerful clans. This was because there were no celestial gods in this domain. Naturally, there weren't any maternal factions. The children of celestial gods who had stayed in this domain had either been killed or captured. Among them, God King Sandini was the one with the worst reputation. For the first time, he had gathered all the major factions that might become his future rivals to discuss how to deal with Zichen. "Sandini, you've gathered all of us to deal with a mere 6th-level God King's faction. Aren't you making a big fuss over nothing?" asked one of the God Kings. "Everyone, I'm sure you have spies in my faction. You've all seen the recent battle. Whether or not I'm making a big fuss over nothing, you know very well in your hearts." God King Sandini looked around at the other God Kings and said in a deep voice, "If we don't destroy him now, he might become a threat to all of us if he continues to develop. By then, it'll be too late for us to work together." During this time, the factions of the former 10 domains had all been paying attention. They naturally knew how great a price God King Sandini had paid in his battle with Zichen. "I'm sure you all have capable helpers behind you. Thus, at a time like this, you should discuss with them and see if there's a need to join forces. Seeing everyone's changing expressions, God King Sandini thought for a moment, then said, Actually, there's another secret. Everyone turned their attention back to Sacred King Zenith, their curiosity piqued. Everyone present was a 9th level God King. There was no secret in this world that could attract their attention. The only exception was a divine weapon that had been passed down for a long time, such as the Heaven-Span Divine Needle or the Armageddon Divine Bell. Replicas obviously wouldn't do. Only the original weapon could be found. However, from God King Sandini's expression, it seemed this secret wasn't small. Everyone should know that after Zeus' celestial god was killed, I made a move against the children of celestial gods. The 9th level God Kings present were all existences from long ago. They naturally knew some of God King Sandini's past deeds. Back then, many of the sons of celestial gods in the other domains had threatened to kill God King Sandini if he dared to leave the 10th domain. All the God Kings frowned. They didn't know why God King Sandini would bring up this matter. One had to know that this wasn't something to be proud of. Sacred King Sandini knew what everyone was thinking, but he didn't care. He said, I did this because I knew that the sky gods had a set of coordinates, and that set of coordinates led to a mysterious world. That world contained the secret to becoming a sky god. What? When the God Kings heard this, their expressions changed drastically. This was something they did not know about. Of the 9 Empyrean gods, only the Zeus Empyrean god knew about this. Once the Empyrean gods died, the ones most likely to know this secret were the children of Empyrean gods. However, I couldn't find it even after searching for many years. Sacred King Sandini said. But as far as I know, there is a woman in Zichen's team who might know where these coordinates are. I've always suspected that she's also a descendant of the Zeus Empyrean god. Sandini, you didn't make this up to get us to work together, did you? One of the God Kings frowned. Even if I didn't tell you this, your capable assistants would have suggested that you take action. The reason why I'm willing to share this secret is naturally because I trust everyone. Sandini said in a deep voice. It's said that the sky gods were suddenly killed back then because they discovered this secret. Once this secret is made public, the order of the divine realm will fall into chaos. Think about it, the divine realm originally had 9 Empyrean gods. If many Empyrean gods suddenly appeared, how could the order of the divine realm not fall into chaos? Alright, everyone, that's all for now. It's up to you to choose. Zichen led his troops back to the forest city. The dark heavenly ants returned to the underground. Zichen returned to the city. Why did you suddenly return? Su Mengyao walked out of a treehouse and asked Zichen who had just returned. Zichen said, We might be besieged. Su Mengyao said doubtfully, They felt the threat from you and want to work together? Zichen nodded. That's good too. You can also cultivate in peace. During this period of battle, Zichen and the others clearly didn't have the time to cultivate. Now that the troops had retreated, they only needed to defend. This way, Zichen would also have time to cultivate. Now that there were no Empyrean gods, level 9 divine kings were the strongest. As long as Zichen successfully reached level 9, he would be an expert among experts. This time, Zichen also planned to cultivate in seclusion for a long period of time and strive to break through earlier. Otherwise, when facing a great enemy, he would have to rely on Heaven Breaker. Every time Heaven Breaker took action, there would be a price to pay. Although Zichen still had countless resources, after returning, he would have to support a great force. Even if he had countless resources, it would still be insufficient. Just as Zichen was cultivating in seclusion, Tyrant and the others were also cultivating in seclusion. Outside the forest, Viennese creatures from the alternate spacetime were all waiting outside. The dark heavenly ants were hiding underground. Other than the ancient trees, there was only Fina's troops in the forest. Other than that, Zichen's troops didn't have any other combat forces. That was because the development of his force was limited and he hadn't nurtured his own troops. LV Ping was still busy reconnecting the teleportation formation. The others were also breaking through on their own. There was no level limit in this world. As long as there were enough resources, one could break through. Not long after, the first God King to break through appeared in the forest city. It was Zichen's master, Wuji. Wuji used to be a brilliant existence. However, due to lack of resources, his cultivation had been delayed. After Wuji broke through, the craftsman ancestor and the others also broke through and became level 1 divine kings. Although they had become divine kings, they were considered divine kings who hadn't awakened. Their former domain worlds couldn't be opened in this world. The allied forces formed by all the forces in the 10th domain finally arrived outside the forest city. Then, they launched the fiercest attack on the Sea of Ancient Trees. During the battle, Pa Ji controlled the Ant King while the Ant King controlled the Dark Heavenly Ants to fight in an orderly manner. Vini arranged for the other mother nests to control the battle. At the same time, Fina left behind many mother nests so that they could control the battle on their own. The moment Jono's Sea of Ancient Trees saw enemies approaching, it would initiate the attack. However, compared to the Dark Heavenly Ants and the creatures from the alternate space-time hiding in the Sea of Ancient Trees, the level of the Ancient Trees was obviously not high. They weren't even God Kings. Therefore, in the battle, a large area of Ancient Trees was destroyed. Helpless, these God Kings from the alternate space-time left the Ancient Trees to fight in the outside world. When the enemies saw the creatures from the alternate space-time of this level, they were in an uproar. At this moment, the foreign tribes standing behind them were completely certain that Zichen had obtained a higher-level mother nest. Therefore, the battle became even more intense. Just as the battle continued, a wave of energy came from the center of the city. It was the aura of a God King. Chapter 31-38. With countless supreme crystal to refine, Jono's cultivation level had improved, finally reaching the Divine King realm. Now, it had become a true King Ancient Tree. Originally, it was emitting a dense green light, but now, there was an additional golden light. It was like a golden halo, enveloping the tree body. A powerful devouring force was released from Jono's tree body. The energy of heaven and earth gathered towards Jono in a frenzy. At the same time, in the outside world, ancient trees withered one after another, losing their vitality and turning into dust. This situation continued without the slightest pause. The ancient forest that had originally covered the desert in a single night was now being destroyed at an even faster rate. The battle in the distance paused. Everyone looked at the sea of trees that had suddenly changed. The leaves of the sea of trees withered and disappeared. The desert that was once a desert turned into a wetland. No one knew what was going on. "There's a chance, let's kill our way into the city." Some divine kings thought that this was an opportunity, so they immediately gave the order to attack. At the same time, divine kings emitted powerful auras and flew towards the sea of trees that had disappeared. But in the next moment, divine kings appeared one after another. They were all level 7, and they blocked these divine kings. A great battle broke out instantly. These level 7 divine kings displayed fighting strength that was not weaker than a level 8 divine king. Because they were brought here by Fina from another world, they were born with the protection of the natural laws. If these divine kings wanted to fight against them, they had to first awaken. The sea of trees continued to disappear. Soon, only a lonely city of trees was left. Even the city of trees was disappearing. In the blink of an eye, the people in the tree houses appeared. The ancient trees had disappeared. This included Zichen. Everyone looked around in surprise and found that the surroundings were empty. This made many people's faces change. Could it be that in just a few short decades, the enemy had already killed their way here? Zichen released his spiritual senses. Sensing the abnormality, he turned to look at Jono. At this moment, Jono was absorbing the energy between heaven and earth continuously. The ancient tree from before had disappeared after being devoured. Seeing that Jono needed energy to grow, Zichen's hand flashed and a God King's soul essence appeared. With a thought, the God King's soul essence exploded and a surge of energy containing pure law energy was absorbed by Jono. Pun! Another God King's soul essence exploded and its energy was absorbed by Jono. Jono, who was only at the first level of king level, had his aura skyrocketed after absorbing 2 pieces of godly king soul essences. The faint golden light that he originally gave off thickened as well. 1. Jono's body trembled with energy, and then countless golden lights flashed. The fruits that Jono's body bore were also emitting a brilliant golden light. Previously it was absorbing. Now that the energy was saturated, it was time to give back. The tree houses that had disappeared reappeared. However, they were different from before. The surfaces of these tree houses were covered in a golden light, as if they were coated with a layer of gold powder. The tree city that had disappeared reappeared. Outside, the ancient tree that had disappeared was growing rapidly. The surface of the ancient tree was also sparkling with a golden light. This golden light was like a thin film that protected the ancient tree. The forest that had disappeared reappeared in just a blink of an eye. It was different from the green light before. This time, it was dazzling with golden light. The God Clan and the existences on the life star that had stayed in the city that year cheered. Apparently, it wasn't because the enemy had attacked them. It was because Jono had leveled up. Congratulations! A smile appeared on Zichen's face. Now I can give you a king seed. It can create another king city. Jono sent his voice to Zichen. Next I can give you a king seed every time I level up. Let's wait for LV Ping to come back. For the time being, Zichen didn't want to build a second city because the situation in the divine world was uncertain. The current city was just right. Besides, Zichen also wanted to go back with Heaven Breaker one more time. At the same time, he wanted to bring his master and the others to that world. In that world, people could awaken. After awakening, their fighting capacity wouldn't be affected in this world. Not long after Jono had broken through, Vinyi had also reached king level. However, according to Wayne, he had only broken through to the regent level. He still had a long way to go before he could become like Fina, who could casually create godly king-level creatures from another dimension. In the Mother Nest, there were different levels. This time, he had reached king level, but he was only at high level. There was still a big gap between him and Fina. According to his level in the Mother Nest, Fina was no doubt the highest existence. She belonged to the Emperor level. 10,000 years ago, when Zichen and the others left, the other forces used 100 years to completely destroy Zichen's forces. However, Zichen had returned this time with swarms of dark heavenly ants and many experts from the alternate space-time. After 100 years of battle, many enemies still failed to come into contact with the Golden Sea of Trees. Lu Ping reconnected the teleportation formation. Then, all the people who had gathered on the Life Star for 10,000 years came to this world. There was no lack of great sages among them. When they arrived, they first had to become divine envoys. Build a second city. After these people arrived, the city seemed a little crowded. Therefore, Zichen decided to build a second city. Jono gave out a king seed. The second city appeared 10,000 miles away. With the endless supply of resources, the city quickly became a new sea of trees. The surface of the trees was still emitting a faint golden light. The two cities were connected by the sea of trees. This city was a city of trials for the newcomers to grow. At the same time, countless experts from other dimensions, Misty Shadow, Giant Crocodile, and others were also developing in this direction. In these years of continuous fighting, their levels and numbers had increased tremendously. Among them, many Misty Shadow and Giant Crocodile had become divine kings. The number was still increasing. After another 100 years of fighting, Jono successfully became a second-level divine king. Then, he gave out the second king seed. After Zichen obtained the second king seed, he started to build the third city. He was besieged by the forces of a region. However, in these 200 years, not only did he not suffer great losses and destroy the city, but he also expanded to 3 cities. The 3 cities continued to expand. There were many people living in them. The cultivators from the Life Star began to use the resources of this world to grow. Although there was still a long way to go, one day, they would be able to grow to the level of Zichen and the others. At that time, it would be the time for the Life Star to establish a foothold in the divine world. In the battlefield, regardless of whether it was the creatures from other dimensions or the dark heavenly ants, they all reaped great rewards. Chapter 31-39. Zichen broke through and reached the 7th grade of the King Realm, which was also the 7th level of the God King Realm. After that, he did not continue to break through as he was worried that he would not be able to return to that world because the highest level there was at the 7th grade. If he reached the 8th grade, he would have to leave. In the past few hundred years, he had used up a lot of resources. Many god generals in the city had broken through to the God King Realm. Zichen felt that it was time for him to make a trip back. He did not have to worry about this place for the time being. Even if the 9th grade came to attack, the countless 7th grade gods would be able to stop them. In addition, the iron sword that came back with Zichen was now a fully deserving 8th grade god king. As an 8th grade god king, because he had awakened the power of laws, it should be easy for him to fight against the 9th grade god king. However, in order to be safe, Zichen felt that there should be a powerhouse overseeing this place. Thus, he asked the Mother Nest to contact Fina. After hearing the news, Fina rushed back half a month later. Zichen told Fina his idea. "No problem. I will stay here and ensure that these cities will not fall," Fina said. "After you return, go find Fei-Ling. She can give you another batch of powerhouses to bring back." Jolena was still the chief steward of this city. She managed the city in an orderly manner. At the same time, she was also grooming new management talents. In the past few years, she had also broken through and become a god king. After hearing Zichen's order, she began to gather the god kings in these 3 cities. Zichen went to Su Mingyao's place. "Decided to leave?" Su Mingyao looked at Zichen as he walked into the room. She had not broken through to the 7th grade yet, but she was not far away. "Yes." Zichen nodded. "You seem to have something on your mind." Su Mingyao looked at him. Zichen said, "After seeing that the 8th grade iron sword is not weaker than the 9th grade gods of this world, I have another idea." Su Mingyao smiled. "You want to bring all the gods of that world back here?" Zichen smiled. Obviously, Su Mingyao knew him best. Su Mingyao said, "That's a good thing. You look troubled. Are you worried that those people can't be controlled?" Zichen nodded. The combat strength of the divine race was extremely tyrannical. When they came to this world, each and every one of them was a powerhouse. Once they reached the 9th rank, those on the king's ranking would no longer be able to suppress them. However, if they lost control, that would not be good news for Zichen. Looking at the worried Zichen, Su Mingyao said, "Aren't you working with the Queen Ant? As long as we show enough sincerity, I believe many people are willing to cooperate with you. On the other hand, as long as you continue to grow and maintain the strongest power, those people won't be able to threaten you even if they lose control. Furthermore, even if they lose control and don't work for you, they won't become your enemy. Before that, you have to think about whether you want to control them as your subordinates or cooperate with them." The two were completely different. If Zichen wanted subordinates, they would have to be absolutely loyal. On the other hand, if he wanted to cooperate, he would have to prioritize benefits. Zichen and Fina had a cooperative relationship with the Queen Ant. They were even friends with her. However, Vigny was his servant. However, Zichen had never treated Vigny as a servant. They were still friends. Of course, they weren't just friends. They had worked together for many years to form a friendship. Zichen stood up. At this moment, after hearing Su Mingyao's words, he suddenly understood. "I know what to do." The battle outside was still going on. Zichen decided to leave immediately. Jolena had gathered all the divine kings, including Zichen's master, Wuji, Qing Nu, craftsman ancestor, and the others. That world had powers that could be awakened. After awakening, they would be stronger. Naturally, Zichen would bring them along. "Has everything been arranged?" Zichen looked at Jolena and asked. Everything has been handed over to Hai Lan. She will take care of everything, Xiaolina said with a smile. Zichen nodded. He was completely relieved. All right, everyone, it's time to go. His world opened up, and one god king after another entered his world. Among this group, Divine General Luo Wei, who was now Divine King Luo Wei, was the most excited. Back then, he had directly left the most influential official faction and joined Zichen's faction. That was a huge gamble for his future. Clearly, he had made the right bet. After everyone entered his world, Zichen looked at Heaven Breaker. He confirmed again. Do you remember the coordinates of this place? Don't worry. This world's level isn't high. It's easy to find, Heaven Breaker said casually. All right, we should go. There shouldn't be any problems, right? Zichen asked again. This time, however, he was talking about the world in the Divine King's heavenly realm. Didn't Fina give you the coordinates? There shouldn't be any problems. After Heaven Breaker finished speaking, a beam of light appeared on his forehead. That beam of light fell into the sky. The space distorted, and a spatial passageway appeared. Zichen turned to look at everyone. At this moment, he didn't have time to greet each and every one of them. After saying, "Take care," he soared into the sky and flew into the sky. Heaven Breaker's attack didn't just break through Jono's spatial seal. It also directly broke open this side of the world. When Zichen appeared on the other side of the passageway, he was already outside the divine realm. Heaven Breaker walked in front. Another beam of light shot out, forming a passageway. After walking out of the passageway, Zichen saw the turbulent flow of space. This caused his expression to become unnatural. He didn't know how long it had taken him to travel through the turbulent flow of space last time. Even now, he still didn't know whether it had been several thousand years. If it was the same this time, then everything would be too late. Zichen grew nervous. Heaven Breaker seemed to sense his nervousness. "Don't worry," he said calmly. "This time, it'll be very smooth." Zichen wasn't proficient in the Tao of space, so he could only listen to whatever Heaven Breaker said. He nodded his head. Compared to last time, although Heaven Breaker walked through the turbulent flow of space this time, he seemed to be walking with a clear path. He didn't have to go back and forth like last time. After walking like this for who knows how long, Heaven Breaker suddenly turned his head and said, "Take out the signal and let me see." Before leaving, Fina gave Zichen a round ball that contained a wisp of spiritual aura. It was said that it could detect her location. According to Zichen's plan when he left that world, he was going to take Fina and Heaven Breaker with him. But now that Fina was in charge of protecting her faction, he brought the coordinates back with him. The coordinates he took out didn't light up. "It looks like I'm still a bit off," said Heaven Breaker. As Heaven Breaker spoke, another beam of light shot out from his horn. This beam of light broke through the turbulent flow of space, passing through who knew how many dimensions. Finally, it reached the end. The ball of light in Zichen's hand emitted a bright light as he walked out. Whoosh! Seeing Heaven Breaker's signal, Zichen crushed the ball of light. A beam of light shot into the sky. Heaven Breaker laughed loudly as he watched the beam of light disappear. "Looks like it's the same location as I predicted. Don't worry, we can come and go as we please in this world." After saying this, another passageway opened up in front of them. There were also countless turbulent flows of space in the middle. After walking out of the passageway, Zichen could clearly sense the aura of powerful beings from another dimension. Chapter 3140. When Zichen reappeared in this world, the first thing he saw was many seventh-rank creatures from another space-time. These beings from another space-time all looked up at him and Heaven Breaker, and there were a few familiar faces among them. Evidently, they'd returned to the God King realm. Feilin appeared. She looked up at Zichen and said in surprise, "You're back so soon?" "Soon?" Zichen landed on the ground, feeling very puzzled. "You've been gone for 30 years. I thought you'd be back in 100 years at the earliest," said Feilin. Zichen turned to look at Heaven Breaker. Heaven Breaker said unhappily, I told you, we didn't spend much time in space-time turbulence. You're still blaming me for everything. It's because of the flow of time. When Zichen left the God King realm and entered the God King realm's path of heaven, it took him only 1,000 years to reach this place. But when he returned, 10,000 years had passed. Zichen thought he'd wasted time in space-time turbulence, but now it seemed that wasn't the case. The flow of time in these two worlds was different. Time in this world was obviously slower, while in the God King realm it was faster. In terms of time, the difference should be around 8 to 10 times. Zichen was very surprised by this discovery. In such a short period of time, there shouldn't be anything major happening in the city. Here. After chatting with Feilin for a while, Feilin took out a contribution token and gave it to Zichen. This was the token Zichen had left behind in order to accumulate contribution points. Zichen hadn't fought a single time in the past few decades, but he'd obviously earned a lot of contribution points. After thanking her, Zichen took the token and said goodbye to Feilin. Then he teleported back to the city. Only 30 years had passed, so nothing major should have happened in this city. Apart from Saint Rentoin, no one thought Zichen had left this world. Zichen returned to the city. Everywhere he went, people recognized him, and their expressions changed. They were quite surprised. After all, it had only been a few decades since they left the city. As soon as Zichen entered the city, he didn't hold back. He opened up his world, and one god king after another descended. The godly kings who appeared in the city looked around curiously. Before coming here, they had a longing for this world. Now, he had finally arrived at this place. The rules of this place were clearer, and the energy of heaven and earth was more abundant. The surrounding people looked at these Wan-Eping gods in horror. According to the rules of this world, except for the natives, all the gods who came here had to be at least rank 3. Where did Zichen find these rank ones? Those are the awakening altars. Feel free to comprehend them, Zichen said as he looked at the sky. The divine kings nodded and soared into the sky, heading towards the awakening altars. The scene that happened in the city quickly spread. Those who heard the news felt that it was extremely inconceivable. After hearing the news, Saint Rentoin immediately came to see Zichen. He was quite surprised that Zichen had returned so quickly. Seeing Saint Rentoin, Zichen said, "You came at the right time. Go and call all the masters of the various forces in the city. I have something to discuss with them." Just after Saint Rentoin left, Bo Yuan, who had advanced to rank 7, also came. Zichen told him the same thing, that he needed to find the forces of the God Clan. Zichen had left the city for more than 30 years. This time, he came back with a group of unfamiliar low-level divine kings. Now, he wanted to gather all the forces in the city. This made all the masters of the forces puzzled. However, they didn't dare to refuse Zichen's invitation. Soon, everyone gathered at Zichen's residence. This was a residence with its own space. It could accommodate the masters of many families and forces. Most of the people present were rank 7. Occasionally, there were some rank 6. Among them, Saint Rentoin's rank was the lowest. Zichen glanced at everyone present. These people who were whispering to each other immediately shut their mouths. The surroundings immediately quieted down. "Everyone, I'm sure you've seen the people I brought back. To tell you the truth, in the past 30 years I left this world." As soon as this was said, it caused an uproar. Everyone found it unbelievable. At that time, Zichen was only rank 6. How could he have left this world? Even if he had left, how could he come back? Thinking back to those existences of the god Wan-Eping, they were shocked, but they couldn't help but believe it. Zichen's gaze fell on the masters of the God Clan forces. He said, "I returned to the God realm." When they heard this, their expressions changed greatly. They were shocked. Zichen said again, "After returning this time, I accidentally learned another piece of news. Apart from being called the Divine King's Celestial Domain, which is the ultimate training ground, this place has another name, the Tomb of the Divine Kings." This name stunned the natives. They didn't understand what was going on. As for the Divine Kings here, their expressions turned ugly. This was because they understood the meaning behind Zichen's words. That's right. The next place isn't the God realm. Or rather, it's impossible to return to the God realm forever, Zichen said. Actually, it's true when you think about it. If everyone who came here could return to the God realm, how many divine kings would there be in the God realm all these years? Zichen's gaze quickly swept across everyone present. He said, "This time, I've returned mainly for two purposes. The first is to bring them here to awaken their powers. The second is to cooperate with you." The surroundings were silent. No one asked anything. "I'll bring you back to the God realm. You'll join my forces and fight. I won't force you to stay in my forces in the future, nor will I control you. If you want to establish your own forces after leaving, I won't stop you. However, the prerequisite is that you'll have to fight for my forces for 1,000 years or accumulate enough contribution points to exchange for your freedom," Zichen said. "Whether you go to the next unknown world or return to the God realm, it's all up to you. The current God realm is no longer what you think it is. The structure of the 10 regions has been disrupted. The God realm has disappeared. The God realm is in chaos. The flames of war have spread everywhere. Yes, Taijian has already left with me. Moreover, he has broken through to the 8th stage. In terms of the flow of time, the God realm is 8 to 10 times faster than here. That's all about the God realm. If you choose to return, you'll have to fight. Because there's no pure land, my forces are currently in a war." Chapter 3141. Zichen explained to the natives what the realm of the gods was. Only then did they have a basic understanding of the realm of the gods. Most importantly, because of the mention of Zichen's grave, they were afraid of the future. After reaching the 8th rank, they would be able to reach another world. However, they did not know what that world contained. Because of the unknown, they were afraid. The gods from the realm of the gods did not hesitate. They came from the realm of the gods and were eager to return to the realm of the gods. After a simple discussion, they agreed with Zichen's decision. Next, they discussed who to take with them. The 7th rank will definitely leave. If the 6th rank wants to leave, that's fine too. As for the 5th rank, it's better for them to stay here and grow," said Zichen. "If the 6th and 7th ranks all leave, what will we do if the foreign tribes attack us?" asked one of the natives worriedly. Although they were once at odds with the gods, they had to admit that the gods' top-notch combat power could still play a huge role in this world. Zichen said, "Don't worry. Those foreign tribes will definitely not take the initiative to attack this city. I can guarantee that." Seeing that they were still worried, Zichen continued, "Because this time, I will also be taking a group of foreign tribe experts with me. If those non-humankind beings wanted to attack this city would have ceased to exist millions of years ago." Hearing Zichen's words, the natives were completely relieved. They were not worried that Zichen was setting a trap for them because it was completely unnecessary. If Zichen wanted to deal with them, they would have been dead long ago. Moreover, Zichen was now at the 7th rank. It would be too easy for him to kill them. The natives didn't hesitate for too long and quickly agreed. Compared to that unknown world, the realm of the gods that Zichen mentioned was clearer and more specific. They wanted to go and see it. After everything was agreed upon, Zichen said, "I suggest that those of you who are leaving prepare more resources. That world's level is not high. It will be difficult for resources like the God King's soul essence to appear." They didn't hide what Zichen had told the others, so they told the others in the city as well. Hearing this news, the Protoss in the city were in an uproar. They had been in this world for too long and were eager to leave. It had always been their wish to return to the God realm. However, when they learned that Zichen had only brought rank SIXS and rank 7s with him, they were extremely disappointed. After informing everyone of the news, Zichen gave them 3 days to arrange everything. Then, he flew into the air and began to exchange the contribution points for resources. After exchanging all his contribution points for resources, Zichen rose into the air and flew towards the sky. The array spirit appeared. "This shouldn't affect the rules, right?" Zichen said with a smile. The formation spirit said helplessly. "This naturally affects the rules, but there is no punishment. Perhaps the god who created this place didn't expect this to happen." Zichen smiled when he got the accurate answer from the array spirit. Obviously, this kind of situation was allowed to exist. Next, this world would become his military camp. It would continuously produce countless god-king warriors for him. What Zichen wanted to do was to provide these god-king warriors with the resources they could use to break through. 3 days was enough for those who had left to settle everything. Then, they gathered in the city center. Under the watchful eyes of all the Protoss and natives, they entered Zichen's world. Looking at the figures in the air, the natives were very curious. The Protoss, on the other hand, were very disappointed. They had stayed here long enough and were eager to return to the God realm. "You all continue to cultivate here and strive to break through as soon as possible. The God realm is now covered in the flames of war. There is no pure land left. It's not a bad thing to stay here." Zichen's voice rang out in the sky above the city. When the Protoss heard this, they were all stunned. There was no pure land left in the great war of the God realm. Whoosh! Before they could ask anything, Zichen's figure disappeared. After leaving the city, Zichen came to Feiling. He wanted to leave with Heaven Breaker from here. Leaving behind the contribution token, Zichen said, "Is there anyone I can take with me?" "I've already prepared them." Feiling smiled. Many rank 7 Celestials appeared. They obviously knew they were leaving and looked very excited. Zichen opened the world and let them in. "We're leaving." After taking them in, Zichen looked at Feiling and said. Feiling nodded. Heaven Breaker opened the world. Zichen saluted Feiling and disappeared with Heaven Breaker. Because Heaven Breaker had already left clear marks along the way, the return trip was very smooth. In the city of ancient trees, ripples appeared in space and turned into a passage. Zichen and Heaven Breaker walked out of the passage. It had only been a few months since Zichen left. At this moment, the people in the city noticed the commotion. When they saw Zichen appear, they all saluted Zichen and called him the city lord. Su Mengyao and the others heard the commotion and came out. When they saw Zichen, they all smiled happily. "You're back so soon. Seems like everything went well," Su Mengyao said. Zichen nodded and opened the world again. The Celestials and natives appeared. After they appeared, they curiously observed their surroundings. When they saw the ancient tree that was emitting golden light above their heads, they became extremely curious. When the Celestials returned to the God realm and felt the familiar fluctuations of heaven and earth, they were very excited. At this moment, there was a cry of surprise. Because they found the rank 7 foreign races. They saw them land in another direction and then fly out of the city. Seeing these foreign races with their own eyes, the natives who had followed Zichen here were shocked, but at the same time, they were completely relieved. It seemed that these foreign races really did follow Zichen. This meant that the city they were in would not be in danger. "The battlefield is outside. When you have time, you can go and take a look," Zichen said. "As for what happens next, just follow Tai Jian's arrangements." As soon as Zichen finished speaking, a beam of light fell. It was Tai Jian. Compared to Zichen, the natives were more familiar with Tai Jian and were less afraid of him. "The God realm welcomes your arrival." Tai Jian looked at the natives and said with a smile. Because of the arrival of the rank 6 and 7 natives and the Celestials, Zichen's already strong army became even stronger. On the 3rd day of their arrival, they asked to take the initiative to fight. Under the circumstances of all-out attack, they destroyed many foreign races' troops in an instant. After suffering a series of devastating attacks, Zichen's forces paid more attention to this area. Therefore, more troops were dispatched here. At this moment, if one were to be in the sky of this world, they would see countless troops appearing from all directions and heading towards Zichen's forces. Chapter 3142. Facing the siege of a region's forces, Zichen's side naturally did not dare to hold back. All the dark heavenly ants were sent out, and Pa Ji was personally supervising the battle. Vinny had received Fina's teachings and condensed the humanoid doppelganger. Then, he controlled the creatures from another dimension to wander around the periphery of the battle. Most of his subordinates were cannon fodder. Naturally, there were also many divine generals among the divine races. As for the divine kings, there were only a few. Fina personally went to the battlefield. Using her immense soul power, she controlled the other mother nests and gave orders to the divine kings from another dimension. They and the dark heavenly ants were the real main force of the battle. The battle was unusually cruel. It was happening every second, and there was no rest. There was no room for everyone to breathe. They could only take turns to fight. When the divine races who came back with Zichen saw the terrifying opponents, they were shocked and dispelled the idea of building their own forces. For some unknown reason, there were shadows of foreign races behind all the divine race forces. The battle was getting more and more intense. Monk and the others also joined the battle and fought with the enemies every day. Their enemies were no longer the divine kings of the divine race but the foreign races. Boom! On the battlefield, the energy went berserk. Monk's opponent was sent flying. It was a level 7 divine king from the divine race. Monk had not reached level 7 yet. He was only a level 6, so it was not difficult for him to deal with a level 7. He formed a seal with his hands and golden light circulated. A palm print fell from the sky and hit the level 7 divine king. The level 7 divine king was sent flying while coughing out blood. Puff! The moment the 7th level Sky Clan member retreated, a ray of black light flashed out and swept past his body. Looking at the dead level 7 divine king, Monk said with dissatisfaction, "Zhang Haotian, you are not allowed to come over again." Zhang Haotian ignored Monk and continued to fly to the next battlefield. The battle was intense. Countless experts died every day, including those on Zichen's side. However, it was impossible for these experts to improve further. That was because Zichen's people were almost all awakened beings. Their combat power was very strong and they could fight a group of experts of the same level. Zichen had not participated in the battle. He was everyone's hope, and it would be fine as long as he continued to improve his realm. Previously, Zichen had been very worried that he wouldn't be able to return to that world once he surpassed the 7th stage. However, Heaven Breaker had told him not to worry and that it would be fine as long as he suppressed his cultivation. The battle outside the city was very intense, but it was all under control. Until now, no force had been able to kill their way into the city. The battle continued without pause. Zichen's people took turns to fight, and the number of enemies who died every day was uncountable. They were like the world's sturdiest iron walls, guarding the outside of the 3 cities, making it difficult for the enemy to take even a single step in. The nominal leaders of the factions, God King Sandini and the others, had already retreated from the battlefield and returned to their residences. A battle of this level was not something that they could afford. Thus, not only did they retreat, they even brought their own people with them. Every God race member needed many years to grow, but the alien races were different. They were like machines born to fight, and their numbers were endless. The battle outside the city continued. Fina's figure appeared in the city. Once inside, she headed straight for Zichen's residence. It was a 2-story treehouse. Zichen. The door to the treehouse opened on its own, and Fina walked in. Zichen, who was in the middle of refining the God King's soul essence, opened his eyes and looked at Fina as she walked in. If the battle continues, it will be very disadvantageous for us. Fina walked in and said, "Although we have quite a few broodmother nests on our side, we only have 2. On the other hand, the enemy has more. Even if we can trade one for 1,000, we'll still be the ones to suffer in the end. Do you have any good suggestions?" asked Zichen. "Send reinforcements. Go to the other world and bring more people here. That way, everyone will have enough time to rest and reorganize. This will minimize casualties. If there are no casualties, then the longer this battle lasts, the better it will be for us," Fina said. In any case, we can't expand the city anymore. It'll be very difficult for us. At the same time, we should take the initiative to attack. How do we attack? Zichen asked again. The battle outside is controlled by the broodmother nests. We can think of a way to kill them. The death of each broodmother is a great loss to them. Zichen naturally didn't have any objections to killing the broodmother nests. However, the crux of the problem was how to find them. Of course, this wasn't a problem for Fina. A figure appeared beside Fina. This was one of her abilities. It could easily sense the location of enemy broodmother nests. At the same time, this condensed figure also had an extremely high comprehension of space mystique. It's a pity Faline isn't here. Otherwise, we could leave everything to her, said Fina regretfully. At this time, Zichen was transmitting to Zhang Haotian and the others to come back. He didn't plan to take action this time. He wanted to improve his cultivation to 8th level Divine King. Tyrant, Zhang Haotian, and the others returned from the battlefield. Even the spirit-devouring king grass had returned. It had grown 7 leaves and was extremely powerful. Next, Zichen had them form a small team and focus all their efforts on killing the broodmother nests that were hiding in the dark. The group left the underground city and headed to the periphery of the battlefield. The broodmother nests were mostly hidden outside the battlefield, observing the situation. While attacking the broodmother nests, Zichen was thinking about how to increase the number of troops. It wasn't that they weren't strong enough, but that there were too many enemies. Under such circumstances, except for Zichen's forces, there was probably no other force in this world that could stop them. However, if this went on for a long time, they would gradually be worn down by their enemies. Now, Zichen had to consider increasing the number of troops. However, if he were to return to that world and bring those below 5th level Divine King here, Zichen would have to give them sufficient resources as compensation. Although he had already exchanged for a lot of resources, these resources were still insufficient for the development of his forces. The main reason was that his forces couldn't operate normally. Due to the war, there were many things that he couldn't obtain. For example, he could sell materials to the official forces in the past. However, he couldn't do so now. However, these materials weren't wasted. They were all devoured by the creatures from another dimension and the dark heavenly ants. Therefore, the divine race didn't have any advantage in such a cruel battlefield. Chapter 31-43. Yiqian's world-annihilating divine bell was given to her by Zichen. It was a replica of the world-annihilating divine bell, but it was not an ordinary replica. It was given to Zichen by the world-annihilating divine bell. Rather than calling it a replica, it was more like a clone. "What's wrong?" Zichen asked. "It vaguely summoned me as if it wants to take me to a place." Hearing what Yiqian said, Zichen remembered the God City. There were still beings from the Life Star living there. However, the God world was in chaos, and they lost the coordinates of the God City. Back then, Yiqian had also started from there. "Let's go and see." Zichen, who was short of people, thought of the God's graveyard. There were many God clan members buried there, and they could be resurrected. The others were busy fighting, so only Zichen and Yiqian could go there. Of course, just in case, Heaven Breaker had to go with them. However, Zichen left the Nether Clone, who was also a rank 7. During these years, Yiqian had been improving the quality of the world-annihilating Divine Bell replica. Taking out the world-annihilating Divine Bell replica, Yiqian placed her palm on it. A light rippled from it, forming a passage. Yiqian glanced at Zichen, and the two of them entered the passage. Zichen, who was walking in the passage, suddenly felt the passage become unstable. Along with a strong surge of energy, the unstable passage suddenly broke open. Zichen and Yiqian appeared from the broken passage. Fortunately, the two of them were not the same as before. Even if this happened, they would not hurt themselves. If it were other weak beings, they would have been torn into pieces by the power of space. They appeared in a world. Sensing the aura of this world, Zichen was sure that he had arrived in the world where the God's city had been. At that time, this world had been suppressed by the rules. Only the God clan members could come and go as they pleased. Today, this rule still existed, but it could no longer suppress existences at Zichen's level. Zichen released his spiritual sense, covering this area instantly. He asked, "Are we going to the city or to the Moon Wolf clan?" "Let's go to the Moon Wolf clan and take a look. For the passage to be forcibly torn apart, it is clearly abnormal," Ichien said. Next up, the two of them flew towards the Moon Wolf clan's territory. When they arrived at the snowy plains of the extreme north, they saw many Moon Wolf corpses along the way. Seeing this, the two of them felt that something was amiss and increased their speed. Along the way, they didn't find any more Moon Wolf corpses. In fact, they couldn't even see any Moon Wolves anymore. All of the Moon Wolves had gathered in the depths of the forest. Zichen and Ichien appeared, only to see the Moon Wolves gathered at the entrance of the Divine Mausoleum turning their heads to stare at the two of them. At this moment, the Divine Mausoleum had already opened. "Goddess!" Some of the Moon Wolves recognized Ichien and exclaimed in surprise. "What happened here?" Ichien descended and looked at the Moon Wolf clan leader who was walking towards her. "Some existences who claimed to be the Son of God came. They ignored our obstruction and forcefully opened the Divine Mausoleum." "Some children of gods?" "Yes, there are a few of them, and they brought other experts with them. They are very rude and unreasonable. With our strength, we can't even stop one of them." The Moon Wolf clan leader's eyes were filled with grief. "After these people came here, they killed many of the Moon Wolf clan." "Why did they enter the Divine Mausoleum?" Ichien asked. "I'm not sure." The Moon Wolf clan leader shook his head. They were only the guardians of this place, and had never stepped inside. They didn't know what was inside. Zichen, who was standing at the side, could vaguely guess the purpose of these people. He said, "Let's go in and take a look." Ichien nodded. This world used to be under Ichien's jurisdiction. These Moon Wolves naturally wouldn't stop Ichien. Even if they did, they didn't have the strength to do so. The two of them entered the Divine Mausoleum smoothly. The pressure from back then was nothing compared to now. They must be here for the Armageddon Bell and the Slumbering God clan. While moving forward, Zichen said in a deep voice, "Now that the divine world is in chaos, it's obviously too late to nurture experts. However, there are ready-made experts here." After walking out of the passage that was filled with pressure, Zichen saw the Divine Mausoleum again. What was different from the previous time was that these Divine Mausoleums were all open and the God clan buried in them were gone. The two of them flew towards the core area. All the tombs along the way were opened. The two of them were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, they were outside the castle. At this moment, the castle was surrounded by the God clan. These God clan members were emitting a strong aura. Each of them was a God king. In addition to the strong aura, there was also a deathly aura circulating around them. Obviously, these were all from the Divine Mausoleum. Once, Zichen came here and forced a God clan member to walk out of the tomb. At that time, they were not so strong. Unexpectedly, they were all God kings now. Sensing the fluctuation behind them, these God kings turned around and glared at the two of them. The deathly aura that surged around them contained a chilling murderous intent. Feeling the murderous intent of these God kings, it was obvious that they would not take the initiative to give way. Zichen was considering whether to kill his way in. At this moment, Ichien took out the Armageddon Bell replica. A ray of light shot out from it, and enveloped the two of them. In the next moment, the two of them disappeared. In the castle, the Armageddon Bell's real body covered a space. There were countless God clan members in it. These God clan members were killed in the battlefield back then. Now they were revived with the help of the Armageddon Bell. Outside the space formed by the Armageddon Bell stood a group of God clan members. Among them, there were several Son of God and they were all level 9. According to the agreement back then, when the divine world is in chaos, you have to join a force. The one who spoke was a Son of God. He was the real Son of God and not the adopted son of a god. At the same time, in a few other directions there were also some people standing. They were in groups of 3 to 5 and each of them emitted a powerful aura. Zhongling, it's time for you to make a choice. This time, only the 6 of us have come. There's no one else. Another son of God said coldly. The space where this area is located has been disturbed by an unknown energy, causing it to hide in space. This should be your doing, Zhongling, right? You know that the divine world is in chaos and it's time for you to make a choice, but you're deliberately hiding and turning a blind eye to the chaos in the divine world? Even if the gods are no longer here, the agreement back then still stands. Are you going to go back on the agreement you made with the gods back then? These sons of God spoke one after another, and coldly said to the Armageddon Bell's real body. This was related to the agreement they made with the gods back then. Since it's an agreement, I naturally have to abide by it. Zhongling's voice finally sounded. It changed the topic and said, But this person is not you. Humph, we're already here. If it's not us, who else can it be? A son of God snorted coldly. It's her. As Zhongling's voice fell, a ray of divine light appeared from the periphery and landed on the battlefield. Chapter 31:44. Looking at the 2 people who appeared, everyone's face revealed a hint of surprise. Before coming here, they had used their great magic to completely seal off the area. It was impossible for outsiders to enter. Even if the 2 of them had the replica Armageddon sacred bell, they would not be able to enter. Their faces were filled with astonishment. As for Ziqin and Yiqian, who had appeared here, they were at a loss. They did not know what had happened. Zhongling, are you stupid? Why did you choose such a person? One of the sons of God said angrily. Why didn't I know that there was such a son of God in the God realm? These sons of God had been famous for many years. They had reached level 9 long ago. Naturally, they did not know Yiqian and Ziqin. Thus, the gazes with which they looked to the 2 of them were filled with malicious intent. The gods had disappeared for more than 10,000 years. The sons of God had lost their protection. In this situation of great turmoil in the God realm, without powerful strength, the sons of God would die. She is the daughter of the pagoda battle god. Naturally, she is a son of God. According to the agreement, I choose to join her force. Zhongling's voice sounded again. The pagoda battle god, an existence who became a god by luck. Are you sure you want to choose this stupid girl who is only level 6? One of the sons of God said coldly. Of course. Zhongling's tone was very sure. The son of God nodded. He smiled and said, Very well. As his voice fell, a person flew out from beside him and charged directly at Yiqian. This person was of course level 9. His eyes were cold. He was happy to kill a son of God. Ziqin, who had arrived here with Yiqian, did not know what was going on. His face turned ugly when he wanted to attack. He rushed forward. Lightning flashed on his body as he punched out. The strength of a level 7 was fully unleashed against the level 9. The reason why he was called level 9 instead of level 9 was that he was not an awakened person. Therefore, there was an obvious gap in combat strength between him and a level 9. The level 9 approached and slapped at Ziqin. Divine light lingered on the palm print, and a bright rune appeared. Thunder explosion! Ziqin roared and the lightning energy in his fist erupted. With a violent boom, the palm print in front of him shattered. The level 9 Divine King's body retreated. His originally cold and stern eyes were now filled with a hint of fear. Seeing that Ziqin hadn't taken a single step back, the expressions of the mocking sons of heaven changed. They were filled with disbelief. Because the other party was only at level 7, how could he fight someone 2 levels above him? Zwama, kill him! The heaven god said coldly. The face of the 9th grade Divine King that was pushed back immediately turned cold. He was a dignified 9th grade Divine King, but he was pushed back by a mere 7th grade Divine King. This was obviously an extremely embarrassing matter. He quickly formed a seal with his hands. Energy surged in front of him, and a giant divine seal appeared. The divine imprint covered the heaven and earth. Divine light curled around it as it descended. A terrifying pressure spread in all directions, and a dangerous aura filled Zichen's heart. Slash! Zichen bellowed. His eyes flashed with killing intent as he unsheathed his long saber. Buzz! The surface of the long saber vibrated. In an instant, it was unsheathed and slashed at the divine imprint. A ray of saber radiance with a heavy aura fell on the divine imprint. Chi! The divine imprint was destroyed instantly, and it turned into energy that scattered in all directions. The saber radiance continued to move forward and slashed at the level 9 Divine King. Boom! Divine light lingered around the level 9 Divine King's body. At close range, he summoned a divine bell of destruction. The divine bell immediately exploded, and the level 9 Divine King was sent flying again. When he regained his balance, there was a blood-red saber mark on his body. Divine blood flowed out of it. Damn it, I'm going to kill you! The injured level 9 Divine King was thoroughly enraged. However, before he could move forward, Zichen slashed again. The saber radiance slashed down with terrifying killing intent. Feeling the terror of this blow, the level 9 Divine King's face changed. He didn't lose his mind in anger, and he quickly retreated. The saber radiance cut through the space and swept past the place where he was previously standing. A black crack appeared out of thin air. The children of heaven who were originally indifferent now had looks of surprise on their faces. Clearly, they didn't expect that a mere level 7 Divine King would have the strength to deal with a level 9 Divine King. Moreover, he wasn't at a disadvantage. A level 7 Divine King already had such combat strength. What if he was allowed to continue growing? Everyone felt the threat from Zichen, so they all glanced at the other level 9 Divine Kings at the same time. There were no rules in the God realm now. Strength determined everything. Even if the children of heaven didn't have the strength, they would still be killed. Therefore, these level 9 Divine Kings instantly understood the meaning of those glances. They all charged towards Zichen in front of them. Their eyes were sharp. Clearly, they didn't care about the reputation of a level 9 Divine King. Zichen's face instantly turned cold. The light of yin and yang lingered on his body. He was about to use his strongest move. Do you think I don't exist? At this moment, a cold snort sounded from the Armageddon Divine Bell. A ripple was activated and spread out in all directions. When the ripple swept past the Divine Kings, Armageddon Divine Bell appeared on the surface of their bodies. However, this time, the Armageddon Divine Bell wasn't protecting them. Instead, it was trapping them. Inside the Divine Bell, these level 9 Divine Kings couldn't move at all. Following that, 2 more rays of light descended and landed on Zichen and Ichien. The goddess is the one I've chosen. In this great turmoil, I will join the goddess's faction. You can leave now. Zhongling's voice sounded again. As soon as she finished speaking, Zichen and Ichien disappeared from where they were. Damn it! When the divine children saw this, their expressions immediately became unsightly. You can leave now. In 100 years we will leave this world. A wave spread out from the Armageddon Divine Bell. The level 9 Divine Kings who came here were all pushed back by this wave. In the next moment, they disappeared from the god's mausoleum. At the same time, outside the god's mausoleum, the entrance turned into a ray of light and disappeared. This time, it disappeared forever. Even the Moon Wolf clan guarding this place couldn't open it. Their duty to protect this place was over. The children of heaven and the level 9 Divine Kings they brought didn't appear in the ice field. Instead, they flew to a place further away. Their faces were filled with anger. It wasn't easy to find this place, but they returned empty-handed. The god's world was in chaos. There wasn't enough time to nurture experts. They could only look for those hidden in various spaces. However, this place was sealed again. Even if they had extraordinary means, they couldn't open it again. Moreover, they couldn't go against the will of the Armageddon Divine Bell. Let's go. We'll come back in 100 years and kill the 2 of them in one fell swoop. When that time comes, let's see what it chooses. Chapter 3145. Zichen and Ichien were brought to a unique space by the World Annihilation Divine Bell. There was a small World Annihilation Divine Bell in this space. Its entire body emitted divine light, illuminating this space. "This is my main body." A face appeared on the World Annihilation Divine Bell, and Zhongling's voice came from it. "What's going on?" Zichen looked at the World Annihilation Divine Bell and asked. "What do you want to know?" Zhongling asked. "Why did the World Annihilation Divine Bell suddenly summon us?" "I summoned you. When I gave it to you, I left behind the power of my main body," Zhongling said. "It's not a simple imitation. It's more like a clone with the aura of my main body. Why did you summon us?" This time, it was Ichien who asked. "According to the agreement I made with the gods, when the god realm was in chaos, I needed to join a faction, and that faction had to be the faction of a god's son." The face looked at Ichien and said, "You're the god's son, so you're my choice." "Why?" Ichien was confused. She had no relationship with the World Annihilation Divine Bell, so why would it choose her? Could it be the god's father? Ichien suddenly thought of something. Zhongling seemed to have guessed Ichien's thoughts and said, "I've never seen a tower battle god. Among the 9 gods I made an agreement with, there was no tower battle god." This made Ichien even more confused. "It's because of him." Zhongling looked at Zichen and said, "Actually, my original intention was to join his faction, even if I had to go back on my promise. But I didn't expect that he would give his clone to the goddess. Since the goddess is here, it's the same to give it to her." "Why?" Zichen was even more confused when he heard this. He was not a god, and from a certain point of view, he was an enemy of the god race. It seemed that Zhongling had no reason to be on good terms with him. "Because you're a heaven-defying one," Zhongling emphasized. "And you're a heaven-defying one who has reached such a realm." Seeing that Zichen was still confused, Zhongling continued, "This matter concerns the secret of the god realm. Although your cultivation level is very high, I'm sorry to say that you still don't have the qualifications to know this secret. All you need to know is that the god realm is about to fall into chaos, and a new order may be born once again." "A new order?" Zichen frowned. "Yes, it won't be long before you see it," Zhongling said. "If that's the case, why didn't you tell me earlier? It's useless to tell you now, even though you may be the only one who can break the stalemate. Right now, the most important thing for you is to increase your strength. At the very least, you should reach the 9th level of the Divine King realm. That way, you might be able to emerge victorious," Zhongling said. "At that time, the new order will be decided by you." Zichen and Ichien still didn't understand, but Zhongling didn't explain to them. "Now all of you can discuss who will refine my body." The two looked at each other, and then Ichien stepped forward. Last time, Ichien was the one who used the world-extinguishing divine bell. She already had some experience with it, so the one who controlled the real world-extinguishing divine bell was naturally Ichien. Moreover, Ichien was a member of the god race, and the world-extinguishing divine bell was clearly a divine weapon of the god race. It was most suitable for her to use. Ichien stepped forward, and a ray of light flew out from the world-extinguishing divine bell. This ray of light enveloped Ichien, and in the next moment she disappeared. "I still have an opportunity here for you. I hope it can help you break through." After Ichien disappeared, the world-extinguishing divine bell said to Zichen. Then, a ray of light fell from the sky. The ray of light transformed into a pillar of light that enveloped Zichen. Within this pillar of light, there was extremely pure energy of laws. The current Zichen definitely wouldn't be able to break through in a short period of time. However, with his power, he would be in danger at any time. After a moment of hesitation, Zichen opened the space, and Heaven Splitter walked out. "I might not be able to return for the time being. You go back to your power first." Heaven Splitter glanced at Zichen, and a ray of light flew out from between his eyebrows. This ray of light fell into the void, and then a passage appeared in the void. He walked into the passage. Seeing this scene, the the world-extinguishing divine bell let out a cry of surprise. This was its world, and also the main body of the world-extinguishing divine bell. It didn't expect it to be broken so easily. Yi Qian had already begun to refine the world-extinguishing divine bell. Zi Qian then began to refine the energy given by the world-extinguishing divine bell. Next, he would have 100 years to comprehend and refine it. Heaven Splitter easily broke through this world, and then returned to the divine realm. The last time he broke through the space, he arrived at the Tree City. Seeing Heaven Splitter walk out, the Netherworld clone had a look of surprise on his face. He asked, "Where's the real body?" Under the situation where the clone and the real body didn't deliberately communicate with their souls, they wouldn't know what the other party had experienced. "The real body obtained an opportunity and is refining it to break through," said Heaven Splitter. The Netherworld clone nodded. Now that the war had broken out, it was naturally an excellent thing that the real body had obtained an opportunity to break through. As for this place, Fina was overseeing it. Now that Heaven Splitter had returned, they didn't need to worry even if a level 9 existence came. At the same time, Zhang Haotian and the others made great progress in hunting down mother nests. Every day on the battlefield, countless low-level creatures from different dimensions died, but on the enemy's side, this level of creatures from different dimensions were the most numerous. As the battle continued, under the situation where Wayne was unable to create more creatures from different dimensions, only God King Fina's level creatures from different dimensions could achieve significant results. Fortunately, Fina had a foundation. She had gathered so many creatures from alternate dimensions that she didn't know how many tens of thousands of years she had spent nurturing them. This was why they were able to survive such a desperate battle. Underground, the monk who had just killed a mother nest said in exasperation, "Damn it, just how many mother nests are there here?" So far, Fina's clone had killed more than 50 mother nests, and there was no lack of divine champions among them. Even so, according to the clone, there were still many mother nests here. "There are more up ahead," Fina's clone said, and a ray of light flew out of her body. The light enveloped the group, and they disappeared in the next moment. When they reappeared, they found themselves in a space where a divine champion-level brew mother was lying down. Seeing this mother nest, the monk rushed forward without hesitation. As usual, he took out the demon-subduing pestle and attacked the mother nest. Buddhist light lingered, illuminating the surroundings. A peaceful aura enveloped the space. In the golden Buddhist light, the monk looked benevolent as he chanted a Buddhist name. The demon-subduing pestle shone brightly, and as if it had turned into a Buddha, it flew towards the mother nest. With a loud bang, the Buddhist light that enveloped the area shattered. A powerful force surged, and the monk with the demon-subduing pestle flew backwards. In front of the mother nest, a divine race appeared. Chapter 3146. From the start of the battle until now, the 9th level Heaven clan had never shown themselves. Both sides had always competed in numbers. This was the first time such a peak battle force had appeared. The level 9 Sky clan members stared coldly at Tyrant's group. Everyone's strength was at level 6, 3 levels away from level 9. Even if they had awakened the power of rules, it was still very dangerous at this moment. Looking at the level 9 fighter, the monk took a step forward and said, "You guys retreat. I'll deal with him." The corner of the 9th level Sky Race's mouth curled into a smirk, as if he was mocking the monk. 1. The golden light on Tyrant's body shone once more as a gigantic Buddha's shadow appeared behind him. The Buddha's shadow held a demon-subduing pestle in its hand as it charged towards the level 9 Heaven race. "Hurry up and leave!" When he attacked, the monk did not forget to shout. As the demon-subduing pestle fell, the surroundings were once again enveloped in Buddhist light. It was peaceful and tranquil. This aura seemed to make the Tian clan feel very uncomfortable. He frowned and threw a palm towards the sky. The palm imprint shot up into the sky, causing a loud boom. The Buddha's shadow instantly shattered and the demon-subduing pestle flew back into the monk's hand. The monk turned his head abruptly, and realized that everyone was still standing there. He immediately looked displeased. Why aren't you leaving? We can't leave. The space has been sealed, the demonic ape said. At this moment, the demonic ape also stepped forward. The black rod in his hand lit up, releasing a powerful aura. Tyrant's face turned ugly when he heard that. He then said in a deep voice, "Then we'll follow the original plan and cooperate." He held the demon's subduing pestle in his left hand while a light shield appeared in his right hand. This was the 9 extreme weapons. After all 9 ancestral steels appeared, all the seals on the light shield were unlocked. At this moment, the light shield was undoubtedly the most powerful. The monk held his shield and charged forward. A strong light was released from the shield and a strong aura circulated around it. The 9th level Heaven Clan members sent out another palm strike. The palm strike collided with the light shield, and Tyrant's body retreated with a loud boom. Whoosh! Whoosh! As soon as Tyrant retreated, the Devil Ape and Zhang Haoyan appeared beside the 9th level Sky Clan, one on the left and one on the right. They used a black stick and a pair of long thorns to parry the opponent's attack. The corner of the level 9 Sky Clan member's mouth curled into a contemptuous smile. His figure immediately retreated, and the 2 attacks brushed past his body. With a difference of 3 levels, a level 9 Heaven Clan naturally held the advantage. The space behind him broke open soundlessly, and strands of green vegetation wrapped around the level 9 Celestial. The level 9 Celestial abruptly turned around. A weapon appeared in his hand, and he slashed forward. Puff! With a flash of cold light, the spirit-devouring monarch grass that had just appeared disappeared back into the void. At this moment, Tyrant rushed forward again while the others attacked from the periphery. It was a group of people fighting against a level 9 expert. Fina's doppelganger did not make a move. She stood in the distance, her hands quickly forming seals. It was a complicated seal, but it did not have any offensive power. The moment the seal was formed, a strange power penetrated the space. In Tree City, Fina was in charge of the city, overseeing the overall situation. Suddenly, she sensed a fluctuation that only she could sense. This fluctuation came from her doppelganger, indicating that something had happened. Patian! Fina's voice sounded. Heaven Breaker walked out of the treehouse and slowly approached Fina. What are you doing? Something has happened to the people hunting the mother nest. I need your help, Fina said. How? Heaven Breaker raised his head to look at Fina. I'll sense the location. You'll be responsible for breaking open space and killing them with a long-range arrow. Heaven Breaker looked at Fina and said disdainfully, Do you think it's still the same as before? An arrow condensed from the energy of heaven and earth cannot withstand the power of breaking space and time. Unless your power has recovered. Fina's expression turned ugly. If her power had recovered, would she still need Heaven Breaker's help? Heaven Breaker waved his claw and said, All right, don't think about slacking off. Go save them yourself. With your strength, it should be easy to save them. This is not slacking off. If I go now, the other mother nests will sense my presence. It will be very troublesome, Fina said. How about you go? I can't sense anything. How can I go? Heaven Breaker rolled his eyes. Fina thought for a moment and said, How about I find you a spear here to use as an arrow? It should be able to withstand the power of space and time, right? Heaven Breaker said. A normal spear won't do. Forcefully breaking through space and time consumes a lot of energy. If you want an arrow, I wonder if this thing will do? At this moment, a voice sounded from behind. Fina turned around and saw Li Ai walking over. At this moment, Li Ai was holding a weapon surrounded by divine light. It was a replica of the Heaven-Span God Needle. Heaven Breaker's eyes flashed when he saw the Heaven-Span God Needle in Li Ai's hand. He said, Beautiful, sturdy, looks good. Fina looked at Heaven Breaker. Since it looks good, let's hurry up. If we're late, everyone will be in danger. Heaven Breaker's figure flashed, and he transformed into a longbow and shot toward Fina. Fina grabbed the longbow and extended her hand. Li Ai hurriedly placed the Heaven-Span God Needle in her hand. Fina then drew the bow with her left hand and knocked an arrow with her right hand. She leaped into the air and closed her eyes in midair. A mysterious energy spread out. She was sensing the location of her clone. At the same time, she transmitted everything she sensed to Heavenbreaker. Soon, Heavenbreaker seemed to see everything that was happening in the sealed space. Done! Heavenbreaker's voice sounded. Fina opened her eyes and exerted force in her right hand. The energy of heaven and earth and the city began to riot, forming a huge whirlpool. At the center of the whirlpool was the longbow that Heavenbreaker transformed into. The heaven-span god needle was absorbing the energy of heaven and earth. Such a terrifying fluctuation alarmed the people in the city. Most of them had returned from the battlefield to rest. When they saw the scene in the sky, they were shocked. There was a barrier of laws here. Under such circumstances, what could an arrow do? In the next moment, they saw Fina release the arrow. The arrow flew out, but it didn't break through space. Instead, it tore open a passage in the air. Then, the arrow disappeared into the passage. In the underground space, Tyrant and the others were still working together to deal with the 9th-level Heavenly Clan member. The clone, who had been standing behind and trying to communicate with the main body, suddenly opened his eyes and said, "Retreat! Quickly!" The clone's voice was very decisive. Although the others didn't know what was going on, they still quickly retreated. The moment they retreated, a ripple appeared on the side. The ripple turned into a passage, and a feather arrow emitting divine light shot out from it, heading straight for the 9th-level Heavenly Clan member. Pfft! This unforeseen event caused the 9th-level Heavenly Clan member to be unable to react in time. In an instant, the arrow pierced through his body. At the same time, the heaven-span god needle's powerful energy exploded, extinguishing his life force. An arrow from a distance killed a 9th-level Heavenly Clan member. You can do that? Chapter 3147. After killing the level 9 expert with a single arrow, the Sky Piercer God Needle turned into a ray of light and disappeared. The clone communicated with Fina and said to everyone, "Let's go to the next place." When the battle broke out, the mother nest had already used spatial techniques to escape. The doppelganger brought everyone to the second location. Once again, they found a mother nest. However, there were no rank 9 guards around this mother nest. There were only a few rank 7 god kings. Kill! Monk and the others did not hesitate and charged forward. The battle started and ended quickly. The mother nest that was about to escape was killed by Zhang Haotian, who was hiding in the dark. These mother nests were also one of the resources that could help one break through. The battle continued and the level 9 experts they encountered were all killed by Fina, who stood in the city. The people in the city could not see what was happening outside. They could only see Fina shooting arrow after arrow and the Sky Piercer God Needle turning into an arrow that entered the void and returned quickly. They did not know that every time an arrow flew out, a level 9 Heavenly Clan expert would be killed. Outside the battlefield, figures stood one after another. They were the leaders of the forces who had left the battlefield earlier. This time, they had reappeared. Everyone's expression was ugly. Compared to the other regions, their former 10th region had tried their best, but they hadn't even been able to take down 3 cities. It's been so many years. I don't know how much longer it will take. I think it's time for us to make a move, one of the leaders said. Make a move? God King Sander frowned. Even if we don't make a move, we'll have to send level 9 experts. Now that the opponents are not level 9 experts, this is our only chance to win. These leaders all had level 9 God Kings by their side, but there were not many of them. In this world, they were the strongest experts. Each of them was the true overlord of a faction. Actually, the battle has continued for so long. It's not something we can control anymore, God King Sander said. Haven't you noticed that the number of experts that have died in battle these days has already exceeded the total number of troops under our control? The other leaders nodded. If not for the help of these creatures from another dimension, they would have been defeated or stopped fighting long ago. The number of foreign experts is much greater than ours. If they had attacked us back then, they would have already unified the divine world. What Sacred King Sandini said was something that no one could understand. Back then, the other races didn't attack the god race. If they were protected by the gods, then why didn't they launch a war of annihilation when the 9 gods had already left? Instead, he was helping them? Almost every major power had outsiders in it. It could be said that the reason why these great powers were able to rise so quickly was because of the outsiders. They didn't believe that these outsiders had ulterior motives and were playing tricks, because it was completely unnecessary. During the years they had spent fighting against Zichen, if the total number of outsiders who had died in the battle against him had been added up, they would have long since unified this entire area. Although I don't know what they're thinking, we don't need to do anything right now. We don't need to exhaust our resources either. That's actually pretty good, Sacred King Sandini said. As long as we don't weaken, we can continue like this. As for rank 9 experts, we don't need to worry. We can discuss it with them. The leaders nodded. They obviously didn't want to send out rank 9 experts because they were worried. What if Zichen had the power to resist a rank 9 divine king? They hadn't been on the battlefield for long, so they didn't know that the other races had already lost quite a few rank 9 experts. These leaders communicated with the outsiders behind them and didn't expect to receive the news they wanted so quickly. Rank 9 experts were already on their way and would move out soon. A few days later, those rank 9 experts arrived at the battlefield. There were more than 100 of them. Sacred King Sandini and the others watched from the back, waiting for these rank 9 experts to form an absolute fighting force and charge into the city to kill Zichen. They could gather so many rank 9 experts, but if they lost them, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. The rank 9 experts charged forward and instantly tore a hole in the battlefield. Fina, who was overseeing the city, noticed the abnormality outside the city through the mother nests that were overseeing the entire situation. She soared into the sky again and pulled the skysplitter bow into a full moon. She locked onto the enemy's position through the mother nest's perception. She released the skysplitter needle, which had accumulated energy, flew out. Buzz! The void trembled as the skysplitter needle flew into space and disappeared. Outside the forest, the rank 9 experts forced their way forward. Suddenly, the void trembled as the skysplitter needle flew out and pierced through the body of a rank 9. The rank 9's surging vitality disappeared in an instant. The corpse fell to the ground and disappeared. Sacred King Sandini and the others watched from behind, their faces filled with anticipation. When they saw this scene, their expressions changed drastically. A level 9 expert had died just like that without sensing anything out of the ordinary. However, they soon realized that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The void continued to tremble as one space after another opened. One after another, the level 9 martialists died one after another. The other rank 9 experts panicked because they didn't know where the enemy came from. It's a replica of the skysplitter needle! Sacred King Sandini exclaimed. He'd once targeted Li Ai, so he knew that Li Ai had a replica of the skysplitter needle. At the same time, he knew that Zichen also had a replica. Looking at the battlefield ahead, the skysplitter needle that appeared one after another was clearly 2 weapons in constant rotation. One was Li Ai's, and the other was the Netherclone's. Could it be that they've mastered an even more powerful method of control? Sacred King Sandini was stunned. Neither Zichen nor Li Ai were rank 9, yet their weapons could so easily slay rank 9 existences. As they watched the grade 9 experts in front of them fall one after another, fear surfaced in their hearts. They weren't confident that they could block such an elusive attack. Thus, after exchanging a glance, they decided to leave as soon as possible. As for this area, they planned to give up on it for the time being. There were only 3 cities here. Even if they handed over the entire area to Zichen, they wouldn't be able to occupy it. Thus, Sacred King Sandini and the others retreated, leaving the outsiders to fight. Fei Na stood in the middle of the city and shot out arrow after arrow until all the level 9 Heaven Clan members were killed. The death of over 100 rank 9 experts was a great loss for the outsiders. Chapter 31:48. In the space where the divine bell of annihilation was, Zichen was still refining the opportunity given by the bell spirit. His soul power was rapidly increasing. However, he had just broken through, so it would take a long time for him to break through from the 7th stage to the 8th stage. The time given by the bell spirit was 100 years. In other words, if Zichen was still unable to break through after 100 years, the seal would still be opened. At that time, the children of gods who had been chased away would come here again. At that time, without Heaven Breaker, Zichen would be in danger when facing those children of gods. The bell spirit was waiting patiently. 100 years was just the blink of an eye to it. The realm of gods was in chaos, and the cards would be reshuffled. This made it feel as if it was seeing the scene of the past. The agreement between the bell spirit and the various gods was just like that. At that time, the 9th god was not the tower battle god, but Zeus. Its gaze fell on Zichen in front of it, and there was a hint of expectation in its eyes. This time, it was betting everything on Zichen, hoping that he could stop the reshuffling of the cards, or let Zichen take this opportunity to join in this situation. In this way, with his identity as a heaven-defying and battle strength, he might be able to do something for this world. However, whether it would succeed or not, the bell spirit was not sure. It was also betting in a gambling manner. Betting on Zichen was an opportunity. Otherwise, everything would continue to be reincarnated, and so on. Time passed. Because everything was sealed, the bell spirit did not know what the realm of gods was like now. However, thinking about it, it was chaotic, and would not become better. 10 years passed quickly. Zichen's soul power became stronger, but there was still a long way to go before he could break through. The bell spirit turned to look at the goddess. As the most beloved daughter of the tower battle god, Ichien was also the key this time. If not for her, it would have gone against the agreement with the gods. 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. When half of the time had passed, Ichien's refining of the world-extinguishing divine bell had made great progress. On the 60th year, the world-destroying divine bell's body emitted beams of dazzling divine light. The divine light illuminated the entire space. Ichien stood in the middle of the divine light. Her colorful dress fluttered as if it was made of rainbows. Master! Zhongling appeared beside Ichien in her spirit form and bowed respectfully to her. Ichien opened her eyes, and the divine light in her eyes disappeared. This time, she had gained control of the world-destroying divine bell's main body. Her cultivation level had improved, reaching the 7th realm. The flickering divine light in her beautiful eyes disappeared. Ichien looked at Zhongling. Zhongling said again, respectfully and piously, "Zhongling greets Master! From today onwards, Zhongling will obey Master's every command. Get up, there's no need to be like this." Ichien waved her hand gently, her voice indifferent and gentle. She turned around and looked at Zichen, who was unaffected by her breakthrough, in the world annihilation divine bell's body. "Master, there are still 40 years before we leave." "Zichen! Master might not be able to break through," Zhongling said again. It originally wanted to call Zichen by his name, but when it thought of the current situation, it changed its way of addressing him. "Don't call me Master. Just call me Ichien or Goddess," Ichien said. "In our forces, there's no such thing as master and servant." Zhongling's eyes were filled with gratitude. It was different from 60 years ago. Back then, it was free. If it didn't want to, no one could force it. But now, its main body had been refined by the goddess, so it had to be controlled by the goddess. Ichien looked at Zichen, who was sitting cross-legged, and said, 40 years? Yes. He'll definitely break through. Although Zhongling didn't know where the goddess' confidence came from, they still had a few decades to wait. It said again, "There's still a lot of energy left in the main body. The goddess can continue to grow with this energy. She should be able to reach level 9 Divine King." Ichien retracted her gaze from Zichen and looked at Zhongling, who had existed for countless years. She asked, "Is level 9 Divine King the highest realm?" "Yes." Zhongling nodded. Although there were still gods in the world, this realm involved the laws of the world. It wasn't something that could be achieved through cultivation. Therefore, Level 9 Divine King was the highest realm that this world recognized. Then do you know how to become a god? Ichien asked. Zhongling shook its head. Becoming a god isn't a realm that can be achieved through cultivation. There's no way to become a god in this world unless you're recognized by the laws of heaven and earth. The laws of heaven and earth? Ichien asked doubtfully. No, it's the laws of heaven and earth. They're even stronger than the laws of heaven and earth. Gods are strong because they can use the laws of heaven and earth. To be precise, gods are no longer a realm. They're the managers of heaven and earth. They manage the order of heaven and earth. Then how can one be recognized by the laws of heaven and earth? Ichien asked again. Zhongling said. The 9 great gods of the deity world will never change. If a new god appears, it means that a god has fallen. What? Ichien's pretty face turned pale immediately. Who knows, there might be 9 great gods in the deity world soon. Zhongling looked at the pale Ichien. It was about to say something, but it stopped abruptly. Obviously, it didn't want to see the goddess sad. The remaining 40 years passed quickly. Ichien continued to cultivate while Zichen continued to refine the energy. When the seal was about to be broken, Zhongling was extremely nervous. Zichen, who had been sitting cross-legged for 100 years, suddenly emitted a powerful aura. The pure energy in this space gathered rapidly towards Zichen's body. His level 7 Divine King cultivation soared rapidly to level 8 Divine King. Obviously, when the seal was about to be broken, he finally broke through to his own realm. Level 8 Divine King, one step closer to level 9. Opening his eyes, Zichen stood up and felt his realm. Congratulations! Zhongling appeared and looked at Zichen with a smile. Thank you? Zichen cupped his fists and thanked Zhongling. If it wasn't for this opportunity, it would have taken him a long time to break through. How long has it been? Zichen asked. It's less than a month before the seal is broken. Zichen secretly rejoiced when he heard this. The final time was coming. The seal formed 100 years ago was finally broken. It's time to go out. Feeling the turbulent energy in heaven and earth, Zichen's eyes flashed. P.S. I'm sorting out the ending of the story. The public account will not be updated for the time being. If there's a sequel, it will be posted in the public account. Chapter 3149. After the seal was undone, Zichen and Ichien stood in the divine mausoleum. Those resurrected gods had all appeared. They were all at the God-King realm. At this moment, they were standing there, emitting an austere aura. Zhongling stood behind Ichien and explained in a low voice. They are all experts who died in battle back then. I kept a trace of their divine souls. After a long time, they were resurrected. As long as my main body is not destroyed, they will never be destroyed. Clearly, these God Kings were also a type of war machine. Ichien looked at the God Kings below and took a step forward. Behind her, Zhongling turned into a beam of light and disappeared. Ichien formed a seal with her hands and the world-extinguishing divine bell appeared in front of her. This was the real world-extinguishing divine bell and not its main body. The grade of this divine bell was the same as the 9 extreme weapons on the Life Star. However, the Life Star had already declined. Therefore, in terms of fame, the world-extinguishing divine bell surpassed the 9 extreme weapons. The world-extinguishing divine bell rapidly enlarged in front of Ichien. The bell rang and a huge whirlpool appeared in the world-extinguishing divine bell. The God Kings below felt the call of the world-extinguishing divine bell and immediately flew into the whirlpool. Light figures entered the whirlpool one after another. In the blink of an eye, all the God Kings disappeared. Ichien formed another seal with her hands and put away the world-extinguishing divine bell. There was a huge army of God Kings in this divine bell. After the world-extinguishing divine bell and the God Kings here disappeared, the space of the divine mausoleum became unstable. The surroundings collapsed, and rumbling sounds were unceasingly heard. "Let's go." Looking at the collapsing space, Zichen looked at Ichien and said. Ichien nodded. The two of them flashed and left this world. When they reappeared, they arrived at the snowy plains in the extreme north. This was the encampment of the Moon Wolf bloodline. They had guarded this place for generations. Now that the divine mausoleum had collapsed, they no longer needed to guard this place. When they disappeared at the entrance 100 years ago, their mission had disappeared. Therefore, 100 years had passed. They were still at a loss because they had nowhere to go. When Zichen and Ichien appeared, they saw many moon wolves in this area. A moon wolf saw the two of them and howled towards the sky. "Goddess!" The patriarch of the moon wolf bloodline came and bowed respectfully to Ichien. Seeing the panic and confusion in the other party's eyes, Ichien said, "All members of the moon wolf bloodline, gather here. Your mission has been completed. Follow me to the divine realm." Cheers were heard all around. At this moment, the space in the distance began to distort. It was torn apart by a powerful force. Someone had forcefully entered the snowfield. Zichen turned his head and looked at the figure that appeared in the distance. A cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "Looks like we came just in time." The people who walked out of the void were the children of heaven that Zichen had seen 100 years ago. They had brought a large number of level 9 experts with them. "Looks like you've already obtained the Armageddon Divine Bell and the God King Army. Now I'll give you two choices," one of the sons of God who was wearing armor said as they walked forward. These people were all strangers to Zichen. He frowned as he looked at them. "The first option is to hand over the world-annihilating Divine Bell, and you will live. The second choice is to die here and let us take the world-annihilation Divine Bell," the other party said again. "Protect the goddess!" The patriarch of the Moon Wolf bloodline, who had yet to leave, shouted. Countless moon wolves flew towards them. The level 9 god kings looked at the moon wolves with disdain. They were like giants looking at ants gathering under their feet. Even if there were countless ants, a giant would only need to stomp them all to death. "Go and gather quickly. We can handle this," Ichien's voice sounded. The patriarch knew his own strength very well. He did not continue to act tough. He cupped his fists at Ichien and Zichen and turned to leave. He just needed to show enough sincerity. "Oh, looks like you've chosen the second option." The expression of the heaven god's son that spoke before became extremely cold. Zichen stepped forward and said indifferently, "If you want to fight, then hurry up. What's the point of being so wishy-washy?" A cold, killing intent flashed in the Son of God's eyes. He said angrily, "You're courting death." As soon as he shouted, his pupils shrank. He saw Zichen rushing towards him. "Kill him!" The Son of God waved his hand coldly. They had seen some of Zichen's moves last time. They knew how powerful he was, so several level 9 god kings rushed towards Zichen. Zichen, who was rushing forward, released the aura of an 8th grade god king as the radiance of his lightning body surged. He broke through. The expressions of the sons of God behind him changed when they sensed Zichen's level 8 god king realm. If a level 7 opponent was so terrifying, wouldn't a level 8 be even stronger? Just as they were shocked by Zichen's breakthrough, Zichen had already come into contact with the level 9 god kings. The power of thunder erupted in an instant, and a rumbling sound rang out. Along with a series of rumbling sounds, one after another, the 9th grade warriors were sent flying backward. The level 9 god kings who were sent flying coughed out blood. Their eyes were filled with shock. A cold, killing intent appeared at the corner of Zichen's mouth. A light flashed in his hand as he unsheathed his long saber. The 9 deaths of lightning was like a psychedelic light that swept past the level 9 god kings. Whoosh! 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 After a few transformations, Zichen came behind the level 9 god kings and stood there indifferently. The level 9 god kings were also suspended in the air, frozen in place. At the same time, the shock in their eyes was also frozen. Puff! 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 In the next moment, blood gushed out from their bodies. Their lifeless bodies fell to the ground. In the blink of an eye, 5 level 9 God Kings were killed. Behind them, the sons of heaven and the rank 9 experts all revealed looks of fear on their faces. They had never imagined that the other party would be so powerful. Everyone, do you want to continue? Zichun looked at the sons of God and asked indifferently. You're courting death. The son of God in armor had a fierce look in his eyes as he started to form seals with his hands. Godly barbarian dragon strike! The sky trembled. Divine light lingered and formed a winding divine dragon. The divine dragon was thousands of feet long and was extremely huge. After it appeared, the world could not withstand its power and began to shake. This was not an ordinary attack. It was a heavenly god's skill. Every son of a heavenly god possessed at least one powerful heavenly god skill. Die! With a cold voice, the huge divine dragon rushed towards Zichun. As it rushed forward, it opened its mouth and 7-colored divine fire appeared. It filled the entire space and extended towards Zichun. Space crackled as it continuously shattered. Pitch black holes appeared one after another. The black holes repaired themselves and disappeared quickly. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.